All right. Greetings, ladies and gentle monsters of Silent Hill. I am your host, Immortal Brandel. I'm joined here by these fabulous denizens of the city. Let's start from the top. Andre, introduce yourself.
Hello, my name is Andre B. Van, and we're gonna have a lot of fun talking about Silent Hill.
All right. Black Shadow.
Yeah, howdy everyone. Hope everyone's doing pretty well. I have some good news for people that at least tonight, if I talk about mutants, it'll probably be talking about actual enemies in the series and not be talking about the dregs of social media, so everyone can relax and know that I'm not going to annoy everyone, hopefully. I'll try. Should be good.
All right. Daybreaker. Introduce yourself, sir.
How's it going, everybody? I've been looking forward to this podcast for a while now, so I'm excited to be talking about Silent Hill.
All right. All right. Drill bit. Introduce yourself.
Oh, hey everyone. This is something that was coming for a long time.
Oh, that's it? Okay.
Wow.
Mr.
Well,
Gummy Shark Guy. Introduce yourself.
And he's dead.
Sorry about that. My mic was muted.
Oh,
I'm Gummy Shark Guy. I have been a meth addict for 3 years, clean for
Okay.
2. And yeah, just excited to talk about Silent Hill. I'm huge into horror and glad to have somewhere to say what I want to say.
All right, all right. Now, Lady Grey Wolf, right? Introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm a huge survival horror fan and been a long time fan of the series, played them all, so looking forward to this.
All right. Operative, introduce yourself.
Bobblehead nurses are really, really hot, and that's all I gotta say. You know who
I
I
think there's a
am.
question about that, unfortunately. I think they got missed. I'm sorry.
Respect, respect. All right. And last but not least, Whitney, right? Introduce
Yes.
yourself.
Hi, I'm Whitney. I've been a Silent Hill fan since the series began in '99. I'm really excited to speak to you all about it and excited to join on the podcast.
All right, all right. I'll actually kick off this party. What made the Silent Hill franchise special to you in comparison to other survival horror games in the market? Anybody can go first.
I guess I'll go one person. This very got me into Silent Hill was this very surreal and bizarre atmosphere that had me sucked in because it was very different from a lot of horror games like Resident Evil, so on and so forth. And I played 2 and 3 when I was around 15, I want to say, and after playing them, I really ended up becoming a fan of the series, and eventually played 1 and 4. Sadly, I played the Western game, made games, and yeah, I'll just leave it at that. But yeah, that's my experience.
I would say what really makes Silent Hill special to me is that because I mean, as a big fan of horror, at some point you've seen it all, and so I appreciate that Silent Hill doesn't go for your traditional monsters like werewolves or zombies or vampires. The monsters are all original designs, and on top of that, since they're meant to reflect elements of each protagonist's psyche, it just makes it that much more interesting to see what the monsters are and how they're used. And that's just something that I personally haven't seen very much in any kind of horror media.
Yeah, I think when you think of the series when it started in 97, 98,
'99.
99. Wow, is that late? Actually, it was a little earlier. Thank you. You'll clearly know the dates better than me. I think what was quite interesting with the series compared to a lot of the competition around, again, with Resident Evil and whatnot, is that it introduced something I think was still rather fresh into the gaming medium, if you will, and that was the whole concept of psychological horror. There have been plenty of games beforehand, which was much more about, taking on these evil, demonic beasts, be it zombies or like the old Alone in the Darks before that, or whatever else. Silent Hill, I think, was quite refreshing in the way it came out, where it wasn't just about fighting enemies that are spawned around you. It was about coping with the environment as much around you, which was almost morphing around you as you kind of progressed, which of course is a reflection of the fact that everything around it is a reflection of a person's psyche, which I think as well is a very cute little kind of idea. I think that's what I think probably distinguishes this game a lot from a lot of its competition, especially at the time, because it wasn't really done. Games since then have done a lot of this. Yeah, we think of just like Dead Space maybe or whatever else, but I think for 99, 2000, it was a very untouched medium. And it was one that obviously caught incredibly well, along with some fantastic art design and everything else that went alongside it. That's probably why it's caught such attraction to begin with.
Yeah, it was definitely very Lovecraftian at a time where that wasn't super popular in the mainstream.
I don't know if it'd be fair to say maybe the game was perhaps a touch ahead of its time almost, but it managed to live. If it lived long enough to reach the point where it was suddenly in vogue and it was able to ride the crest of the wave, which it did with Silent Hill 2 and going on beyond that. The first game was a huge gamble because it could have completely fallen apart. They used a lot of, obviously famously or infamously used like the technical limitations, with the fog to draw out the distancing issues, because of course 1999 console was still pretty weak back then. So it was a mix of very crafty use of what it had available, and just its design I think was fantastic, and no wonder it caught on. Fantastic game.
Black Shadow. You brought up actually a point. Any of you guys know the conception, at least how it started out?
I do.
But
I remember it vaguely because I think the team had to watch a lot of. I know they had like Jacob's Ladder as an inspiration for the game.
Oh, not that per se.
Well, no, I know about the development. If you guys want me,
I'm
go
sure you're going to be
into
our
it,
expert for the podcast, so
Sure, you can
Okay.
Right ahead.
enlighten us.
So, Silent Hill, Konami wanted to make their own kind of Resident Evil game because the first Resident Evil was so popular. So they tasked like 15 people in their company. They were kind of like the misfits. They didn't really fit in anywhere else, and tasked them with creating the game. And the team didn't have really any support within the company, which was rather upsetting when you read about it. They didn't know what they were doing. Konami kind of lost faith and just ignored them. So they decided to do their own thing. So it was supposed to be more like a Hollywood horror, like zombie game. And they decided to just do their own thing, make it a psychological horror and whatnot. And it came together because they were ignored and they went against orders pretty much from Konami, which was pretty surprising. Famously, Sato, he did all the CGI work. He did it all on his own. All that work is done by one man because he wanted to make sure he got credit for the game. Otherwise, he would have had to take on a fake supervisor because he was like the youngest in the group, and for some reason in Japan they're like, someone that young can't have the credit. They need to have a supervisor over them. And so he said, fine, I'll do it all myself. He did all the CGI. They took a lot of risks, and I think what made the game work was because they kind of didn't know what they were doing. So they didn't have any kind of preconceptions on what a horror game had to be. They were just kind of going with what they liked. So Kiichiro Toyama, he's the director and writer of the first game. He never wrote a horror story before, and he says he's kind of a scaredy cat. So he said that he just took the things that he did like occult and UFO stories, and kind of took the more horror elements from that, and they made the story. So yeah, it's a really small team, only 15 people, and it wasn't until it released and it was kind of like a surprise hit. It wasn't until E3 in 98 Atlanta where everybody was like, holy shit, what is this new game? It looks so different. It looks so cool, beautiful, that Konami is like, oh, maybe we should probably throw some money at them. And then they started advertising the game, and then they demanded a sequel, which is when they got a bigger staff. It went from 15 to 50. So I just thought it was interesting that the staff were all misfits, and they were able to cobble this game together, and it's become so beloved over the years.
One of those cases of a small team having a blank slate to work with and probably not really knowing what direction to pull, and they punted for one, and here we are 20 years later talking about it.
I'm kind of glad they did, because I think if they did the whole Hollywood zombie thing, then people would just be like, well, this is definitely just another Resident Evil clone, and that's it.
It was funny is that they did, when it was first advertised, like in magazines, they're like, Resident Evil clone. Well, that's what it was compared to, until people actually played it and they realized how different it actually was in terms of the score, gameplay, just the whole look and feel of it, the story. Yeah, that was the greatest idea they ever pulled, because I couldn't imagine how it would be now. I think it would still be popular if they leaned into that route fully. I just don't think that it would have the same staying power as it does now.
It wouldn't have been a juggernaut.
Yeah.
Not at all.
Yeah.
I think as well, the argument is to be made that even if, say, it had not worked, even if they had gone to do something that was totally different, it could at least be classed as maybe like a noble failure. If they'd have just gone down the same route as Resident Evil and sort of kind of almost been a copy of the original, then it wouldn't have been looked on at all well and thought, well, it was just a bit of a cash-in. But they tried legitimately to do something completely brand new. So at the worst, it was no failure. As it turned out, it caught fire and exploded into one of the most famous series of the entire genre, which is, fair credit to them, and very admirable as well, because they didn't have to do that.
Anyone else on this question before we move on?
Well, I guess I never really answered the question.
It's fine.
For me, I just really loved the setting of a small town with a dark past and how it goes more for the psychological scares. It's both creepy yet also beautiful, as environments are so fun to explore and full of bizarre touches, whether it's like a strange painting, an odd placement of items or furniture, or menacing writing on the walls. The series embodies the type of games I love to play, with a huge emphasis on plot and characters, and it has a killer soundtrack.
It does indeed. It has some bangers in there for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I guess I'll finish us out saying that it was just a series that was so different in the whole genre. It gave us a lot of depth that a lot of games don't go into. There was something that you could actually talk about and discuss with somebody. It wasn't just, let's kill some zombies like a lot of other games. So, just having that depth, something that you could go in and say like, what are the implications of this? Or like this character's like themes were like so heavy. It was so different.
I think one last thing, and I'll shut up, promise. I think is also going off of that is the fact that we're doing it in 2020 when, it's been a long time, it feels like, for some people, since there was a Silent Hill game that was out that was like widely accepted sort of thing. I mean, I know we'll talk about it later on with Silent Hills, but that was cancelled 5 years ago, and there's still people who talk about it and wonder what might have been. It goes to show there is a intrinsic name value at the very least of Silent Hill. People still talk not just about that, but what could still happen in the future. And we'll get into all the Silent Hill stuff and what happened all there with Kojima and all whatever else. But I think for a series to have that power of a name has got been such a long time since the original game came out, and even since the last sort of big release, I suppose you could think of it for that. Is incredibly impressive.
Yeah, I mean, just look what happened when Dead by Daylight announced Silent Hill skins. I bought that game just because of the Silent Hill skins. And,
it shows. It shows. They don't license it often, but when they do, the audience is there so much so they think, well, they do it more, probably make more money. But I don't think it's just about that. And it's certainly, I don't think it was to Kojima, obviously, when he was in charge of that. Obviously, in the year of 2015 and all the rest of that. So I think it was as much a passion project of his as well, and just a way of expression. All
right, so can we move on to number 2? Because I'm sure every answer of mine is gonna get stolen.
I would have said something for number 1, but I think it probably was already summed up.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel, to be honest. Like, it's no offense though. But
all I was really gonna say is that I just like that it didn't try to be campy compared to RE.
For that first one, they kind of got some spotty voice acting, just a little bit, like
Well, it was kind of common for the time since they would always just get people that lived in Japan.
But it's not too bad compared to most games, especially RE1, where you were almost a Chris sandwich, a Jill sandwich, just like.
I mean,
I don't know.
mean,
It's just, have you seen my daughter? I mean, like, I don't know.
I mean, what's kind of funny is that Yu Suzuki with Shenmue and English voice acting is that he just hired people he think that looked like the characters rather than actual talent.
Wow.
I mean, there's some logic to it. It might be bad, but at least he tried.
Even Silent Hill 2, it's some pretty cheesy voice acting, admittedly. How can you sit here and just eat pizza?
Yeah.
That's the line I always go to too.
Yeah, but then
Well, with that being said, though, Brandon, read off number 2.
All right. What is your personal ranking for every Silent Hill game? Describe how you feel about them from best to worst.
Oh.
I should probably go first since I read this one.
Yeah.
It's going to be quick. So, best Silent Hill 2. I think that's a no-brainer for anybody, really, because that was when they really stepped up the production value. It really showed in the team. I think they stepped it up, too, with, like, more members being on board for that project and trying to hit the launch of the PS2 back then. And it's just a really overall great sequel that refined on a lot of things from the first one, as well as built up on the formula they had going that was wildly successful. I would say the worst that I've played so far is probably... It's not a bad game. Like, it just has a lot of problems, and I think it's Downpour because stuff with the frame rate, being at 50, like...
Oh, it actually plays really well on Xbox One now. I was really surprised. Yeah.
Well,
so if you ever want to replay,
Oh, so they fixed that game?
I was really surprised. No lagging.
Okay, because I have
I didn't have that issue with it.
I have the PS3 version, so I'm just putting that out there. Like, it was 15 FPS. It was really, really bad. So maybe I'll get an Xbox.
So wait, are we talking about base Xbox One or the X?
Oh, I guess the X one. I got an Xbox like recently, and I tried streaming the game, and I was like flabbergasted at how well it was running because I was so used to the bad lag in the town and stuff, and it was like gone. I was like, holy wow.
I mean, it's nice for Konami to put the Silent Hill games on Xbox. Would have been nice to just have the original Xbox versions for 2 and 3, but oh well.
Yeah, that is unfortunate, but that's my best to worst.
I mean, original version for 2. There was never an Xbox version for 3. My bad.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Just
the originals over the HD remaster that came out, and it was not that great. But
well, yeah, that was awkward. That, of course.
Anyone can sort of go next.
But yeah, I guess. Well,
sure.
Oh. I kind of, who wants to
Drew, you go ahead.
Drew, you were talking first. You go.
You can go first, Drew.
Yeah, for the best, I don't know. It's between 2 and 3. I'd probably say 3 for personal reasons, mainly because I thought I liked the environments and music more, and I kind of liked Heather more as a protagonist compared to James, because at least she kind of has some connection to the first game.
Yeah, I liked your reactions. I felt it was a nice change of pace because she actually reacted to the horror she was seeing and wasn't like okay with it.
Yeah, but
once you look at all of the guys who are just kind of like, what is this?
Or James putting his hands in a toilet.
Oh God!
Right, you can't say you have balls. Let's be honest here, though. James got a lot of balls going through that shit and not freak out.
Didn't
you heard Heather's reaction where?
Yeah, he jumped through
a lot of holes.
But yeah,
I remember that.
But yeah, I feel like Heather just feels more real as a protagonist, like in my opinion.
She's probably more sympathetic because the whole idea is that these are people that have made questionable life choices. I think that's a way to put it. And you know, the whole idea is it's a way of them kind of like repaying for sins, whatever else, and the whole order stuff. Of course, there was nothing that Heather could have done about any of this because she didn't make any poor life choices. That's what she was made. You know, that there's going to be spoilers here, of course, but the whole, you know, she's part basically demon effectively because of the unholy shit that went on in the first game. So I think it makes it more sympathetic because it's not a case of that she's done poor things like tried to kill his wife or whatever else. She's just been dragged into it without her own volition. So it's a lot easier to connect, I think, in that respect. And of course, the tie backs to Resident Evil 1. Oh God Almighty, Silent Hill 1. Sorry, Force of Habit. I think, yeah, she's definitely probably a lot easier to connect as far as the main character is concerned, instead of Harry, who just lost his daughter, and then James with the whole wife stuff. I think Heather's definitely got like more scope for that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'd say after 3 is probably 2, obviously then 1. 4, I actually don't think it's bad. It's just very different from the other games.
I mean, it's the weakest of the original.
With
first 4
Silent.
easily.
I mean, I understand why they made it. They just didn't want to repeat the same 3 games again, and they wanted to try new ideas.
Which I think
feel like
is
the game...
probably a good thing. I don't know. I mean, I've admittedly not played Silent Hill 4 yet. Cheap plug alert, but I'm streaming it on my channel at the end of the month. But that's beside the point. Yeah, I think all the games, to be fair, have all got their own tastes and their own sort of design choices to them. Again, to kind of reflect the individuals that are going through it and kind of seeing it through their eyes. So it's probably not a surprise that there's people that prefer some to others as far as like their taste and that, because there are a lot of differences between the lot.
It's not a bad game, but I do have issues with how they handle the inventory, because in order to...
No, you mean lack thereof?
Well,
Yeah,
you can say that. I was getting to that point. You essentially have the item box, and there's like only a certain number of slots you can put weapons into, and you have to keep going back and doing that. And I just found that really annoying. Like, I kind of prefer how it is in RE, where it's like there's an item box, you dump your stuff there, and you don't have to worry about anything else of the sort in regards to that. In this game, you have to keep going back to the room, and it gets tedious after a while.
Yeah, unless you know what's coming up ahead, then you're gonna have to keep going back. I did like that the room does get progressively possessed over time. That was kind of cool.
How you guys felt about that? Your safe room wasn't safe anymore.
That was what I was going to say on the inventory system, just because, like, having it set up the way that it was, it forced you to go back if you didn't manage well, and then your room would get progressively worse. So that was just a game mechanic in and of itself, which they even built on with Origins, having something similar where your items would break, or you had to just kind of manage a little bit differently than a lot of the rest of the series.
It's cool. Like, I don't get me wrong, like the stuff in the room with the hauntings and everything, making you go back and re-experience that, I thought it was fun to see. Like the babies coming out of the wall, I was like, holy fuck, that's like that's completely insane. But it's just kind of like, it's backtracking, and once again, backtracking can only go either in a good direction or a bad direction, or it could be either tedious. And I kind of felt like what they were trying to do, I understood it, but I didn't want to go back to the same safe room like every single time, and I'm like in the middle of something, I'm about to figure something out and get the key, and then all of a sudden it's like, well, my weapons are breaking, or I can't hold all these health drinks, I have to go back. And that's where it's like, it gets a little bit annoying.
How did you guys feel about the escort mission?
Eileen?
Yeah. I don't like escort missions.
Yeah,
I mean,
they're kind of, even like you don't in video games, I think, regardless of what they are. If you don't like escort missions, then I'm trying to think of many escort missions that are like good in video. There aren't many. So it's kind of real. Either you think it's the right mechanic, or you just despise it. I don't think there's really an in-between.
I mean, honestly, escort missions should only be good as long as they're like invincible. That's the way I could be accepted. Because if I'm taking damage, I'm taking damage. Don't let the freaking person I'm escorting take damage, because it's an inconvenience more so than a challenge.
I mean, it could be.
Eileen?
It could be like.
It's just if she gets hurt too much, she gets possessed, and then it'll affect your ending, because she'll like power walk into the machine at the end.
Yeah,
I'll pretend not to hear this.
So it wasn't really that big of a deal, because you could fix it.
Yeah, with the candles.
I agree. It's not too bad, because she can't die. It's just, it will affect the ending.
Weapons, and she could help you too.
Yeah.
Which was
there's an irony I want to point out. from what was being said before about like backtracking, item inventory management because of limited inventory and stuff, and it's constantly on the save from. It's almost like they took some leaves out of Resident Evil's playbook and perhaps tried to bring them into the series, which is ironic when you think how well, of course, that series is done, and yet it didn't really fit into perhaps into Silent Hill, which is weird when you think about it. Maybe it goes to show how the two series, although they're still brands of horror, are really indistinct from each other, and they're really, universes apart almost, although they are in theory just variants of a theme. One's more physical and survival, the other one is much more psychological. You try and take some elements from Resident Evil, bring it into Silent Hill, they might have done with The Room, and then suddenly you get the mechanics that just don't seem to fit very well. It's kind of bizarre, really.
It's more like they didn't have been implemented well, more so not able to fit.
You think they could have perhaps changed it? So, I mean, limited inventory is limited inventory. You either have it or you don't. I don't see how you particularly, if you're going to give them like 20 inventory spaces, you might as well just let them carry whatever the hell they want.
Yeah.
I believe it was it 10, 12, or something like that? I believe it was from what I've seen. Which is fairly generous, perhaps.
You can carry 10 items up to 10 of each item, I believe.
Something
But
like
I
that.
think there's a little caveat. Is like if you say if I carry like two different sets of bullets, like 20 grand total, that's like literally 2 different inventory spots, which is obviously not a good thing.
Well, in Silent Hill 4, it was like a single bullet would take up an inventory spot. So if you picked up
a
like
single bullet.
Yeah.
But I imagine up to like an X amount, it would still be the same inventory spot. It wasn't like
no. It was one.
Oh, really?
It would take up multiple spots. So I never used the gun because of that reason.
No, it stacked up to 10 on one inventory spot.
I don't know. My impression is in Melee wasn't too bad in that game, anyways. But yeah, that's just what I want to point out, that it seems like they brought some elements over from perhaps some Resident Evil, trying to incorporate it, and perhaps either didn't implement it very well or just didn't seem to fit with Silent Hill, which is kind of strange.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I suppose I should probably answer the actual question, shouldn't I, as well? That'd be a good idea.
I hadn't finished ranking the rest, though.
Yeah, ranking the rest. Again, it's a bit of a tricky, because again, I've not played too much beyond Silent Hill 3 and such. 2 is definitely extremely well regarded, although it should also be stated that a lot of big series, people remember a lot, it's like the second game of the series is usually one of the best regarded. I think when you think back to lots of series, because it's that nice point where they refine what perhaps didn't work in the first game, and people are still really catering for it to be improved. And it's usually the biggest jump is between the first and second games. Obviously, it had a brand new console to work with, so it had all sorts of new hardware, and they used it incredibly well. 2 definitely gets a lot of love. Though 3, I think, again, just with the whole Heather thing, it's a lot easier to connect with her. I probably prefer that more. It's a tough call. Like, they're both very close in my opinion. Silent Hill 1 as well was incredibly good, although did have some issues here and there, which they did iron out towards in other games. So, but I think you have to go a long way into the series to start getting the games that people would consider weak, be it Downpour or whatever else, which obviously aren't particularly as well regarded. But anything the first 3, even the 4th game, people don't seem to generally particularly hate too much.
Well, yeah, it's only after Team Silent left that everything got. At least it was mixed for everyone.
We'll talk about that,
Mixed,
I'm sure.
Negative, mostly.
All right. Anybody else got finish answer the question? Because
Sure. I'll make mine quick. So probably share the same sentiment with everybody. My favorite, obviously, is Silent Hill 2. I just have a lot of nostalgia for that game because the first time I didn't play it, but my older brother, I got to watch him play through it multiple times. So it's just kind of rooted in nostalgia for me. But overall, with my own experiences, I just really enjoy it every single time I play it, regardless of which version I play, except like the HD re-released, because that was oof. But probably my worst, I would say, just because I just don't really care for how it is mechanically, is Shattered Memories. I know that it does
really a main one.
Right, but I do think that just having it be so focused on more of the sort of investigator sort of aspects and the weird way that like it played on the Wii with all the touch mechanic, like the Wii motion controls and all that. it really wasn't a good blend for me. And I'm not a big fan of horror games that force you into running away from your opposition, and because you can't fight back against the things that appear in Shattered Memories. And I've that's always been kind of a sticking point for me when it comes to some horror games. I just don't really like that feeling, because realistically, if you were in that situation, you would grab the closest thing that could be used as a weapon and smack whatever's in your way. You wouldn't just run. I mean, unless obviously, depending on the circumstances, if it's something bigger than you, I suppose. But
it just mentioned that like certain cases, like you just legit cannot fight back. Yeah, like think smarter, not harder. Get the fuck out of there.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, that was probably the weakest out of the Silent Hill games for me.
Mm-hmm. As far as you mentioned Zero, like or Origins as it's called here in the West.
I never played that game. I have it like still sealed. I showed it on Twitter, and I'm like, you know what? I got this game for like $20, and I never fired up a playthrough, and I don't know why. But how is
It's
Silent
fun.
Hill Origins?
You should
It's
play
pretty
it sometime.
Okay, it just has some unfun levels to replay. Like the Cedar Grove Sanitarium is huge, and it's just a pain to get through. It's actually lower on my list. I wasn't a big fan of it, but I was really impressed with how well the game came together, despite its rocky development, because it originally started in Climax LA, and they had done all the CGI work and whatnot, and Konami, I guess, saw it and were like, no, this is terrible, we're going to can it. And Climax UK came in, they're like, no, we can turn it around. And they basically rebuilt it from the ground up, keeping the CGI movies because they were already done, and built it like in 6 months. Knowing that and replaying it, I'm like, wow. Because I'm sure you guys remember the trailers for the original with it was kind of like an over-the-shoulder view of Travis.
like
and he was fighting like
I remember.
yeah,
that.
and he was fighting like a purple monster guy. It was not really Silent Hill at all. And just knowing its development history, I have a new appreciation for what we did get, because it could have been so much worse. I just wanted to say I think I'm a little bit different from the group here. My favorite's actually the first one, but I think it has to do with more of that being the first one I played, and when it came out, it kind of cemented my love of the survival horror genre. So I think I have kind of this nostalgia working for it as well. But I don't know. I just always seem to go back to Silent Hill 1 as my favorite.
It's definitely my second.
It depends a lot on. Sorry, I was gonna say. I think it depends a lot on when you got into this series as well, if you did, because it has spanned a lot of time for not a huge amount of games. When you think it's encompassed nearly 20 years or whatever. There hasn't been like a huge amount of games for it. You think there's something like Resident Evil, for example, has been out pretty much the same time, and there's been tons of games out for it over the course of 25 years. Silent Hill has not had anywhere as many, so I think that makes perfect sense to me. If you started it much earlier, you get that nostalgia feeling. And nostalgia is a very, very powerful feeling for a lot of people. I had played, I think, 1 first, but it was a bit too rough for me. 2 had that refinement, which is where I was able to kind of really get into the series properly. So,
what 2 did well, what it did right was, so for like Silent Hill 1, they were more concerned about creating the environment, making a scary environment first, and then kind of tailoring the story around that. When they did Silent Hill 2, they made sure to lay out like the entire plot and characters first, and then made the game. So because the story is so tight in Silent Hill 2, I think it's kind of why it resonates with so many fans. It's a really simple, easy to follow story. You don't have too much wild stuff going on, and I think that's why a lot of people tend to gravitate towards the sequel, Silent Hill 2 out of all the games.
I think one thing that this series can never be accused of is not trying to be innovative over the course of its life. That's one thing this series can always hold to itself. It's never repeated its formula. It's always tried all sorts of new things. They haven't always worked. That's clear, I think, from some of the later series, but they've always tried to push boundaries and do something different, which I think, especially given gaming perhaps nowadays and over the past maybe 4 or 5 years, I think it's something that can definitely be appreciated.
All right, hold that thought. There's a question in chat. Someone said, "What would be a game that can be a good inspired by Silent Hill work?" And honestly, I'm drawing a blank because there hasn't been many games recently trying the whole psychological horror thing. I mean, there is The Medium, but that's not out yet. That comes out like holiday 2020, I believe.
The closest thing to that is Evil Within.
Evil Within, yeah.
Yeah, but
that's probably a good show.
the problem is that it's very unfocused.
Like I said, it's the closest thing to it. Like, it literally doesn't use psychological horror though, but it's more in keen to Resident Evil type game rather than Silent Hills.
Yeah,
basically.
When you make that
thing
comparison though, like the story for the first one is not that tight, so it's kind of a little bit weird, but that's the closest I think it will get, honestly.
Yeah,
I think it's mainly indie games. You see a lot more
That's what I was
inspiration.
thinking. There are a
from-
lot of really like
Silent
psychological
Hill.
horror games, like
Resident
The
Evil's the same.
Suffering, or which one was I thinking? Galarians is really psychological.
Yeah,
Nice.
There are a lot
I've
of
heard that for a long
I mean,
time.
I
even
remember
stuff like
Galarians.
There are a
like
lot of-
Slender with like all the fog and everything, and
Or like
You know, the-
Siren.
yeah,
Well,
Oh,
Sirens,
yeah,
Sirens by
Siren.
Keiichiro Toyama. He wrote Silent Hill, so
So
Yep.
it's
That explains it.
there are a lot of things that draw from it, and just like going into like the indie like or like RPG Maker, like oh my goodness, how many games you could find that it's like this is like a 4 to 6 hour game. It could be another Silent Hill if they had like a development team, something like Ib, where you just have
Yeah.
something that was really solid and it's really psychological. That
yeah, or stuff
probably,
like Ao Oni or like the Witch's House and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Just yeah, all those. I didn't want to like go in because RPG Maker, there's 1,000 that are.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's its
They
own
played
discussion.
Silent Hill when they were a kid.
Actually, you know what? I was like, this kind of goes to that question though. I cannot think of a game that's trying to be like Silent Hill, but I could think of plenty of first-person games that try to be like PT itself.
yeah, a lot
Yeah.
of
Been
phones.
influenced, yeah. Tons.
Yeah,
yeah,
because
definitely.
the thing is that PT exploded. That's the thing.
And people are misguided about that too, though, because Silent Hills was not supposed to be a first-person game. There's only for that playable teaser.
I thought Kojima said he had an idea where he wanted to make the house segments in first person while exploring was third person.
I think he
that
did
would be-
say that. He said it was going to be a hybrid, but for people saying it was going to be like first person throughout, that was false.
Yeah,
I think there was all sorts of stuff that got said about that. There was a massive rumor mill around Silent Hills, which was not helped when it eventually got cancelled. That didn't help at all.
oh yeah.
No.
Yeah.
We'll get to that though.
We'll get to that.
Yep, we'll get to that. But okay, who didn't answer number 2?
I didn't. So I guess I
Okay,
could vote.
let's people answer the question, no matter origin, because we gotta move on to those big questions.
Yeah.
So for that one, I thought it was kind of gonna be different. That I'm gonna say that I think 4 was probably my favorite. Like if I had to like put it down on paper and say like categories or something, I think that one would probably get the most points just because of like the depth, the amount of characters who had something that really like tied in throughout the whole game and came back, and just like the good content that was there for like the puzzles and stories, the little creepy like letters that you could find, or just looking through like the like spy hole on his door and seeing the handprints, the like just like the like effort and the way everything tied through and had some little like nuance that like I know why that's there. Just kind of feel, and just like the whole like it pulled things in from the first 3 games as well, just like was just always like a nice touch, and just like the creepy atmosphere that like it like seems like it built like more from like Silent Hill 3, where that's probably my number 2, because it had that atmosphere that like everything had like some kind of like reason why it was like a little bit more creepy, or just like that feel when you were in like a certain area, whether it was like the sewer level or it just kind of like that was probably where the game started to drag a little bit, but it had like some of those really creepy like extra moments where you thought that there might be a monster when I go into this room. And just like the way that like feel like just how it like grabbed at you and you were like preparing for something, even if it didn't come, or just like the little story bits where they like pulled the story that you found in the school from the first game and like, you know, like added to it and like had those little like creepy stories like in the apartment when you're trying to leave and there's this monster and you kind of think, I'm gonna have to fight that thing. And it's just like that like preparation, the like building like momentum and fear. I'd probably put Origins before I like mentioned 2 as well, just because of like that like feel, like you said, like the sanitarium's a little long, but it's still like a really creepy atmosphere. And just like I loved the enemies in that level for just like those like things where, you know, if it was, I think if the light was on, it's been a long time since I played Origins, then they would like go crazy and attack you and the light had to be off, or it's
Oh
vice
yeah.
versa.
Are you talking about
Those
the
things.
shadow ones?
Yeah, and then you could see and it was just like a metal piece, like one of those things like, and the more you know like about like psychology and things that they used to do to people, like actually do to humans, like made that like level so much creepier because it was like you walk into this room and there's the bath for the hot water, there's the bath for the cold water. They put them in that one and then they put them in that one and back and forth, and it's like that was like in there. So you just have that like layered like fear of like real things that are scary versus just like the atmosphere of like the monsters that are like totally like bizarre and like not real. So
Did you like
it just had that nice
Travis's story?
juxtaposition. I loved Travis's story, like just like how they like, and I kind of don't want to spoil stuff for people who haven't played it.
Please don't, because I have not played the game.
So
I've
like,
already had
just
it as a spoiler
for his like story bits that are in the game and just how it develops like over time is just like really nice, like all the way up through the ending where just like even things that it's like that you might just infer about like a tiny detail of his story as it goes on is just really nice. And that's why like once we get to 2 and you had said like how 2, it's just more digestible because they give you the complete idea in 2, where all of the other ones, like some parts of it, they're just in your imagination. It's just a building thrill and you might not even get to see the monster that's like described to you, like, and what they may have had if they had even gotten to that point. I couldn't even imagine. But 2 like gives it to you. They tell you what happened, you see it at the end, like it's just a closed loop, like, and James even gets to like leave at the end. So like through his like choice to do with himself afterward might like, you know, be arguable, but he gets to leave and he gets to, you know, have a choice that like is so like it's different. And then 1, it's like so hard because like 2, 3, and 4 are so good to like have 1 like go above them because it's so hokey and they didn't have what they could do for the other ones. And just like anytime you like look at something and you're really like, I like physically with my eyes cannot tell what that thing is, but I know that bullets are there when I check it.
Are
It's
these still
just
your
a little-
best and worst?
Yeah, I'm going through them in order. And then there's Homecoming, which is meh but a bit creepy, and then Downpour, which is just meh entirely. So
Yeah.
that'll finish it out.
Downpour was disappointing, to be honest. I was actually really hyped for it when I played. I was like, this
Yeah.
game could
I
be so
know.
much better.
It basically
could've
had a
been.
lot of trouble development, and yeah, it's a mess.
Oh, definitely.
I mean,
I actually
And
liked
every level of it.
what were you saying, Whitney?
Oh, I just said I really liked Downpour. I rank it like my 4th favorite. I don't know. I really liked how it brought back an open world feel to the series. And there was like an emphasis on exploring the town for like the different side missions. And after Heather, I really liked Murphy. I liked his reactions to the monsters and stuff. But I was pretty disappointed with the technical issues with the game when it first came out, with like, the lag and whatnot. I didn't play it on PS3. I played it on 360. But I heard the PS3 version was even worse.
Please,
So,
yeah, never play that because of this, that kind of soured my experience with that game. That's why I'm kind of like, it's low on the list for me in terms of what I played, because I have not played Homecoming, just to reiterate, and I have not played Origins. But in terms of what I played, I would say that version of Downpour is the worst.
yeah. Did anybody else play the like side games, like the play novel or the arcade or Book of Memories or anything like that?
I've seen a playthrough of the arcade, but it never came out here in the West, so I never got the chance to play it.
I never speak of Book of Memories.
I think we should move on to the next one though, because we're like 45 minutes in.
It's gonna be that kind of thing. Yeah.
It's gonna be long.
Yeah, it's a shitty Diablo clone, to sum it up.
Yep.
Hey, Ren, real quick, let me actually answer this question briefly.
Mhm.
For favorite though, I actually don't have a favorite though, but I might just narrow it down to two because the one that I enjoy that story a little bit more than I enjoy threes, followed by maybe one or four. One is janky as shit, but it's a really really cool story. Same for four. Like it feels like an oddball, but I do like the what it tried to do. Now, fun fact though, Homecoming was my first game that got me into the series. I'll make this clear: it is a bad Silent Hill game though, but I enjoy it as a title of its own, without any relations. Like ignore the contradictions, like with Pyramid Head. I do think it's an okay game. It's not as bad as people say it is, honestly. But it's the best Silent Hill
game. Has a banger opening.
Yeah, it does.
Yep.
And Silent Hill 0 or Origins, that game I am very, very mixed on. I don't like the fact that they call it Origins. I feel like it's more, they kind of have some contradictions in that game that do not follow what the first game established. But I do like the character at least, so I'll give him that much. All right, yeah, I'm done now. So who wants to read up number 3?
I could have known. Oh, Andre?
Sure, I'll do it.
All right.
Okay, number 3. How do you feel about the story and narrative structure of the Silent Hill franchise? This includes talk about symbolism and character motivation. I really can't say, to be honest, because it's kind of weird because Silent Hill 2 is really different from 1 and 3, because 1 and 3 deal with the cult and are a continuation of each other. 2 is its own thing, and same with 4. But I'd say the narrative structure is done pretty well, actually. I do like all the characters, and I think reason I love Silent Hill 2 so much is I really like James's whole arc throughout the game, where it's kind of more like you don't know what he's in Silent Hill for. It's initially just to find this letter, but as you go through the story and you sort of figure out why he's there, it actually makes a lot of sense. And there is pretty much I'm pretty sure everyone's aware of what happens during Silent Hill 2.
Yes.
Yeah, basically James killed his wife. It's and depending on your actions throughout the story, it's either James killed her out of mercy and he regretted it and he wants to atone for it, or James more so did it just for his selfish desires. And that's kind of the reason Pyramid Head exists as a monster. It's a manifestation of James's guilt and also sexual repression.
And I think he wants to be punished too. That was I think one of the main themes of 2.
Yeah, he comes to that realization at the end of the game when I think it's the double Pyramid Head fight, when he said, "I needed you to punish me for my sins," and then he's like, "Now I know what I must do." Then he fights 2 of them, and if you don't have any bullets during that fight, they kill themselves, which is funny, but it's very symbolism based. I love it for that reason. It's so many small pieces of symbolism, or major ones like the bosses, and of course the unfortunate thing that happens to Angela, and it's just all culminating into one big thing with the story, and that's what I really like. The other ones, they also have those same psychological elements, but they also focus a lot on the occult and what the Order is doing and all these other people. So it is still interesting, but I felt like the other games were a little bit more straightforward with 1 and 3, but I still enjoyed those games for what they were.
Yeah, the thing that I actually appreciate 2 and 4, because surprisingly those 2 games connect more.
Yep.
I just found out about it because there's, sorry, spoiler, there's a character from 4 that was actually involved in 2. I'm not going to name names because I think you got to go out of your way to find that one though. But
There's 2.
There's 2.
Mhm.
But the thing I appreciate those games for over like 1 and 3 is that is about the character and their experience in Silent Hill rather than how they got involved into Silent Hill. You know, like with Heather, like she's a demon child, some shit like that, you know. So like I
Yeah.
appreciate the circumstances that James went through as far as his synopsis in the game.
Yeah, that's really why I really like James as a character, because he's very I think what makes his circumstance relatable is James is like really awkward and just really shy, but eventually you kind of realize that there's like a much darker. It's sort of like he's got like much darker impulses underneath. Which, yeah.
I think
It really worked
this
with
is.
Silent Hill.
Sorry, go on.
Sorry, no, I was going to say with Silent Hill 2, I think what also worked was it was the first game to really kind of watch what the player did, and it affected the ending. It was really subtle. So, like, you would get the ending where he committed suicide if you acted, like you didn't care about your life. He was always low on health, looking at Angela's knife. I also really liked the detail of, as you went through the game, Mary's original letter would disappear on you, and you could see it like slowly disappear if you kept checking your inventory. And I think that really added to the whole storytelling with Silent Hill 2.
It
Yeah,
really
finding
did.
her letter
Yeah,
changed your ending as well.
Mhm.
Yeah, because if you examine the knife too much, James will actually want to kill himself, or at least he gives the impression he wants to. And I think one thing I really like is you guys know Eddie, right? Eddie.
Yeah.
Good old Eddie.
Yeah, Eddie was just good lord, man. That guy was a psych. Like at first he's like really harmless, but as you go through the game, this dude is like just a straight up psychopath, and he tries to kill James. And when you find him in that meat locker, and then you figure out like it's just all those bodies in the bags are from all the victims Eddie killed, I was like, Jesus Christ, man, this guy is a nut job. I was like, it's pretty crazy. Yeah, Eddie was great though. I really liked him as a character, even though he killed a dog, which is unforgivable.
I like how that sets up both characters, like when you come across Eddie and Angela and you realize that they are both experiencing their own version of Silent Hill due to all the stuff they committed in the past, whether it's, Angela murdering her father for being a rapist, or Eddie murdering a ton of people because people were calling him names, bullying him, and then he was shooting people as a result. They all see their different versions of Silent Hill, so to speak.
I do appreciate like Angela's case though, because what she sees is like the world is burning. But then you see James standing in the middle of the flames, and she's like, "You don't see what I see." Then she walks off, and I'm like, "Oh snap! I didn't realize that. I thought James knew the place was on fire though." And then until it dawns on me, the little girl, Lauren, I think her name was, like she sees people in Silent Hill. I think something like that, right?
She sees nothing because she's pure, I think.
She just sees an empty town. That's why she's so confused, because it's just a normal town for her.
Actually, I got something to add on that. I think the reason why that James, Angela, and Eddie see those monsters is because they sinned and Laura didn't sin. So that could be one explanation.
Well, this is what I was going to mention, sort of going a bit big picture here, is that the Silent Hill, I think one of its biggest strengths, and can be sometimes a bit of a weakness for it, is that it's very... The topics it discusses and thinks about and kind of brings up are really, really complicated.
Mm-hmm.
If you think about it, it's not just a case of there's an evil corporation or you're trying to, revenge or anything like that. This is a very complicated series. Every game, although it's of a theme, everyone's seen different things for different reasons, and they're interconnecting. We start digging into these characters, sort of into what people are doing and why they're doing it and why they're involved. You can get really, really involved into people's characters, their motivations, the reasons for being there, and what they ultimately want as well, and what they desire. I think it can be a bit of a put off occasionally for some people, because some of the stuff the games I think try to explore can sometimes be a bit perhaps overly complex, and some of it perhaps you need to dig really hard into a game to get a lot out of it. And I think it's a good thing. And again, it's ambition. It's the ambition of trying to explore these things, which of course we all know Kojima was something that I think he legitimately tried to do with these games. To use them as a medium to sort of communicate as much as anything else sometimes. But like again, you think about, say, with Silent Hill 2, for example, everyone's seeing their own version of Silent Hill. Like that for a video game, on paper, that's fairly easy to understand. But when you start digging into why people are seeing different things and everything else, it can be very, very complicated, which can be a bit of a put off sometimes. But I think it's very, very, very ambitious of them, for sure.
It definitely kind of respects the player's intelligence. What's really great about this series is it spawns so many discussions because people see the games in such different ways, and I think this is why it survived so long despite not having a new release, because there's so much to dig into with the games that have been released. There's all these debates about, oh hey, is Pyramid Head actually a good guy and not not just James Punisher. I think this series really lends itself for good in-depth discussions because it leaves a lot up to player interpretations, and people can see the game so differently.
There's definitely a lot of subjective nature to the games and the plot around them, which is great. It means we can sit around and talk about shit like this, to be honest.
Yeah, I agree, man. Yeah. It's funny because years after 2 came out, people are still discussing it. It's pretty insane. Like, these games have been out for so long, and just hearing people talk about it is always just fascinating me, like coming up with new theories, like sort of like trying to, like, why this happened, why this character's this way. It's always great, Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, I have a theory. So James is not dead, and he's in a new game right now, and it's called Resident Evil 8 Village. Considering how Ethan Winters looks. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Actually, are we almost done with this question? Because I actually got a side question to ask. So we didn't go.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think Drill was going.
Well, everyone mostly said what I was gonna say, so yeah, we can move on.
Okay.
All right, I was going to ask, like, who is your favorite character, like, in one of the games? Like, it doesn't have to be main character, just your favorite character that you can relate to, or whatever. Mine's the game was Angela.
Mine was Lisa Garland from the first one.
Lisa's up there for me, definitely. Because they never delved very much into her. There's a lot.
So sympathetic.
But they didn't never delve into her character too much either. I think so. There's a lot of open air questions about it, which you could interpret however you want. Which I think was
Yeah, I think for her, it was mostly she did everything to save Alessa, and there's a lot of conspiracy behind that, and she was also hooked to drugs from what I remember, because I think Kaufman gave her White Claudia, and that also messed with her head.
PTB.
Yeah, so
she was being blackmailed into taking care of Alessa.
Yep.
It is kind of sad when she does turn, though.
Oh yeah, that scene creeped me out.
Yeah.
I always this is my own theory, but I always thought that the Lisa we met wasn't the real Lisa. I thought it was another manifestation from Alessa, because
like an illusion?
Yeah, well, because Alessa, she made all the creatures are from her nightmares and stuff, right? When her powers get bound again by her mother with the flowers, she loses that ability, and it's at that point you see Lisa's exterior kind of start to crack. And then she says the line to Harry, I'm just like them, I just didn't notice it before. And I think she's referring to the otherworld nurses because unlike the other characters, we never see her outside of the Otherworld Hospital, Elkmill Hospital.
That's what I was
Oh,
saying.
actually,
I
you're
was
right.
I was saying that yesterday when I was actually doing a playthrough of the game in this server. I'm like, why is it that she only shows up when the other world happens, but whenever Harry's out of it, she's never around? And that might be a perfect reasoning as to why.
My theory was, now there's nothing really into the game that says this. I always thought that maybe Kaufman killed her because she was ready to like break. She wanted to get away. And in the opening scene, you see him grabbing her arm. And I thought maybe since Alessa was trapping them all in her like nightmare world, that maybe she was giving Lisa the chance to get her revenge. Because if you get the good ending, you see Lisa, Lisa pull down Kaufman into the other world. So that's sort of my own little pet theory. Either that or she died from a drug overdose. One or the other.
Yeah, that could work.
I thought the idea was because Alessa was like, she'd been like immolated or something, wasn't she?
Yes.
But she didn't actually and then she was like obviously suffering underneath the hospital. Lisa was obviously being sort of blackmailed into kind of caring for her. So it makes sense that perhaps, because obviously the other world is a figment of the manifestation of Alessa's thoughts or whatever you want to describe it. It's perfectly reasonable perhaps that was kind of in some way forcing her to perhaps to just stay within the boundaries of what Alessa knew in a way, perhaps something along those lines. There's loads of different ways to interpret it, which is great.
Yeah, you guys keep saying that Alessa's like half demon. It's not quite right. She's just the mother. She's just like the mother of God. So she just has a demon fetus in her uterus.
Yeah,
that's about it.
If anyone is, it's Heather. Yeah, Alessa wasn't such.
Well, no,
Heather's
Heather's the same. She's just a reincarnation version of Alessa, and she just has the fetus in her.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah.
But Harry did think that she might be like a demon. Like he said it in his little journal that you can read, that he was thinking about killing her because he wasn't quite sure what she was, but then he ended up loving her too much. So
yeah.
Damn, that is
and Harry's
kind
the
of dark, though.
best dad. I swear to God.
Silent Hill for you. It deals with some pretty crazy shit.
Yeah, that's my favorite character. Keep it simple, Dad.
I really liked Harry, which is why I was super sad to what happens to him in 3.
Oh, it was heartbreaking when you walked in. I was like, no,
and then
the reasons for it makes perfect sense as well. The whole point was it was meant to be heartbreaking. That, of course, was the entire point of doing it. It wasn't to do anything to do with James. It was entirely to do with Heather, or Harry, even. Sorry.
Yeah, when you see him in his living room, and he's just gutted.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it was a clever plot. That really, I think it was one of Silent Hill's best plot points. I reckon, because it was you bring someone in from the past and using it for what was currently going on, and once you realize why it happened, it wasn't out of spite or anything. It was just pure to obviously generate malice. I think it was really, really clever.
I mean, it was
sad.
Nurtured the God inside of her with hate.
Yep.
It was a nice touch. It was like a nice touch whenever they did the joke and the UFO ending where Harry's fine. And
No.
UFO endings are funny.
Yeah, when he's hanging out with the alien, they're like, "Oh, let's get rid of Silent Hill," and they just blow it up.
Yeah, just nuke the thing. Best thing they ever did.
Oh man, those joke endings. We have to get to those. That's a later question though.
Yeah.
I think we can move on to the next one.
I was gonna kind of be a meme with that question about favorite character because I was gonna say the dog was my favorite character.
Oh, Shiba Inu. Yeah, the dog.
Shiba Inu.
The dog controlling the spaceship.
No, Daybreaker, since you're here, my man, you want to take number 4?
Sure. How do you feel about the cancellation of Silent Hills? Were you excited or skeptical about the collaboration between Kojima del Toro and Norman Reedus? I will say, from my own perspective with that, that sounds like a match made in heaven, that combination. I was skeptical, to say the least, about the game in of itself. I wasn't really sure the direction that they were going to go. So I wasn't really too hung up on the fact that they canceled it. I think because we had so little to go off of, we didn't have all this build up. It was literally just the playable teaser. It was PT, and that's all we got. Like, we didn't have a full-fledged demo. We didn't have a bunch of cinematic trailers or anything like that. It was literally just that. So for me personally, I wasn't too upset about it. I could see why people were. I think I was more upset with the fact that so many like carbon copies of PT came out because of it, because the horror genre, especially on the indie scene, is just oversaturated with copycats, and there's little room and little innovation for what you can really do with the genre, because a lot of it's been done before. So obviously the copycat idea is going to be present in a lot of games that are made in the genre, but it was just more or less carbon copies of what PT was. Like, there were so many games that were just using it as a template and just literally just like, oh, we're going to change a couple of the assets around, but like all the same, like, oh, hey, the lamp on the freaking ceiling moves at some point, or you like cycle through the same hallway over and over again. It was just like so many developers, instead of trying to do something original or maybe using that as a base to launch into what could potentially be an original game, just wanted to jump in on the hype because, oh, hey, look, the Konami canceled it, and so we can make a quick buck, basically.
Yeah, I agree. Remember how many like people were hell bent on remaking that game because it got pulled from the store?
Yeah, I remember that. Yep.
Yeah, so many people were like, oh, we're just going to do the first level, put it on PC, and that's it. And then I remember there was another game that they made in the same vein of PT, and it was really popular. I forget the name of it, but I just remember it was first person. They wanted to do it, and then it got sort of canceled.
Allison Road?
Yeah, Allison Road. That's what it was. And I was like, I wanted to play it, but I just remember at first they put out the trailer, I was interested, and then I just thought to myself, this is just PT 2.0 in a sense. So afterwards it just waned a little bit, and then that's when they made RE7, and people drew their comparisons from there, even though the developers were saying like, oh, we made this game way before PT, and we all know the story.
That's what
on
I
that.
would have said too.
Yeah, we all know the story on that. It's like, yeah, first person definitely blew up for them as well, because they sort of took the same blueprint and put that into their game. So I agree with Daybreaker. There was a lot of copycats for first person horror back in the day because PT was getting successful. It's one thing where I diverge a little bit. It's like, I really would like to see what the original statements were going to be when Kojima said that he wanted the game to be first person in certain areas, like the room, and then he wanted it to be third person, because there was that sort of misinformation going around where people said they wanted they thought that PT was going to be like the full game, like first person, and Kojima said no, it's going to be a little bit different, and it's unfortunate we didn't get to see that rather.
Well, I think the fact there's a lot of PT copycats is probably a product of the fact that there was a lot of hype for the game. If the game wasn't particularly, people weren't worried, then people wouldn't have been trying to do this and that version. And the fact that obviously then the game got hyped and then got cancelled probably fueled it, if anything else. I think that probably made twice as many people have a punt in it, because they thought, well, not only they can do this and express that, try and do what they think it should have been. And obviously 100 people could have told you 100 different ways probably of what they thought PT should have been. Obviously the whole issue that happened with Kojima around 2015 was at best sad and at worst disgraceful, depending on how you look at it. Obviously it was 2015 was a pretty miserable year in that respect. It was the Game Awards, I think it was that year, where Kojima got reportedly barred by Konami, and I think it was I think he had some awards from Metal Gear Solid 5. I think it was it Kiefer Sutherland, I think it was.
Kiefer had to get the reward because Konami wouldn't allow Kojima to go to reward shows or anything like that.
Yeah, he was under contract and he was banned, and that was a can of worms, dude.
Yeah, that was an incredibly sad. Just watching that as well, it's just like it just didn't look good. But again, going back more to Silent Hill itself, that's why there's a lot of copycats. There was a lot of hype for the game, and the fact again, like even now, you can talk to people about Silent Hill as PT, and people will A, remember it, and B, think, oh, what if they'd done this, or this, or this. There was a lot of scope they could have explored that game. And I think had it actually come true, and who knows, we might be sitting here saying it's the best Silent Hill game ever made. It might, I don't think it's unreasonable to suggest that might have happened.
Yeah, I was more answer of the idea that we didn't get to see what could have happened because Kojima that pretty much mastered the cinematic style stuff while integrating into his gameplay. If you don't count Death Stranding, and of course you got Del Toro, who is like the guy that loves to do horror stuff. I mean, if you've seen his work though, you know what he's capable of doing, and of course I think he's also a writer. So like it was a match made in heaven. Just know they needed the right thing to do it. I think Silent Hills was that. So for Konami to not only give us as little information as possible, but to also straight up cancel it, despite Del Toro himself, being like, yeah, the game's still going. We're excited for it, and then boom, canceled. Like, come on, that's not in good faith at all.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
the thing
it
is,
was-
so I was going to say with Kojima as well, he's obviously, a lot of the work over Silent Hill has had a lot of influences to games, to medium, to films. I think him tying up with a film guy, something like this, was, I think, a show of how big scope he wanted to try and make this game. Maybe it might have been a bit too big scope, perhaps, when you think about what it might have been, but unfortunately,
Well,
it's
that's
one of
always
those-
been
we'll never know.
Kojima in general.
Well, this is true. He's a very, very big scopy sort of guy, as we've seen with the Silent Hill series for 15 years, as it turns out. So, he's not scared of pushing boundaries. He's been doing it a long time, and dare I say, he's been doing it very goddamn well. Or was at least doing it very goddamn well up until 2015, at least, and all that shit occurred.
You gotta look at it this way. I mean, at least he managed to get Norman Reedus and Mads Mikkelsen even in Death Stranding, so that's kind of a feat, actually.
And some people absolutely adore that game to bits. There's some people that think it's amazing, and what it tries to tell and everything else, which is again very Hideo. So,
I think just what is the last blow for that is when the fans really wanted a Silent Hill game for so long, and the fact that they just said, you know what, cancel it, that's it. And then after the fact, it's like, I always think to myself, like, if you want to make something good, then you probably should replace it with something good. And Konami has been making statements saying that we do think about Silent Hill a lot. We kind of want to make a Silent Hill game, but not right now. And the fatal blow is just them not doing something as good as that Dream Team was. And people are still waiting for a new game.
Oh,
Yeah,
real quick.
I think that stuff with like PT didn't help that though, because they did like kind of just do the project like on their own, and if Konami had wanted to do another Silent Hill like at some point, and they're like so finicky on like just like canceling projects like in the past anyway, that really didn't help. And if they had had one, maybe they had canceled it. Just having to pay any attention to Silent Hill with PT, or like having to like prepare, like they were probably afraid they were gonna have to sue them over this. Like there's a lot of like other stuff like at play, just like, with the feel and like just who Silent Hill belongs to.
Here's my opinion. I think they want to do that, but at the same time, I think they don't want to do it with Kojima because remember, they also butchered Metal Gear Solid 5 as well, and there was a lot of hoopla with that game too.
Yeah, just like the behind the scenes stuff that we're not sure about.
There's one thing I actually want to point out too is with the PT demo, they actually also updated the game to lock it out for people who are actually playing it. So if you update game that day, you're in luck.
Yeah, there was a whole bit about that too, because people were actually selling their PS4s and their PS4 accounts, like their PSN accounts, to people on eBay just because it had the PT demo installed on the system. So, I mean,
name another game that anything like that ever happened about. Name another one.
I can't think of any.
Exactly.
Flappy Bird.
Oh yeah, I was just about to say Flappy Bird just came to mind. Yeah, that was a fucking thing too.
But yeah, the fact that PT can almost be lost to history is kind of scary.
Well, someone was able to actually make an emulated version of the original PS4 like last year, I think, and put it up.
People working on that for years, I imagine.
And then someone made like a PC version on their own. I mean, it's okay.
Yeah, the emulation scene, like I know that's a topic for another day, but like the emulation scene, like over these past couple years, has been pretty amazing with the leaps and bounds that they've made. So it's kind of crazy. It's not far fetched to think that they could get a 1-to-1 emulated version from the PS4 of PT demo.
Definitely.
But yeah, I was more bummed out with PT being canceled, mainly because there really wasn't much we knew about it.
Mm-hmm. That's where
I
I
mean-
was just like,
Yeah,
like,
it's not like
was-
I was more
Oh, go on.
bummed out with Scalebound getting canceled because at least we saw gameplay of it.
Wasn't Scalebound mostly issues with Kami and his team against Microsoft?
Yeah, and mainly
it's-
also frame rate.
That's the whole story though. But is everybody done with this question? Because let's move on to number 5.
mhm.
I still want to
Yeah,
answer.
Go ahead,
Oh.
King of Hearts.
All right, so I was pretty disappointed that it was canceled because I mean they did put a lot of hype behind it in terms of like announcing which artists were like working on it. Like a particular name that comes to mind is Junji Ito. That him working on Silent Hills. Based on just his art alone, I knew like, oh, we were gonna be in for some shit in this game. But at
That
the
was
same time,
problem, though. Was it?
the same time, I was really skeptical because I mean I love Kojima, but the dude is weird. So he was probably gonna have some weird shit that probably wouldn't fit within the Silent Hill universe. And then at the same time, because of the trend of the gaming industry to lean more towards interactive movies than full video games, I really didn't have the highest hopes when I'm like, okay, Kojima's gonna be going to Silent Hill, and then oh look, they're adding a movie director to the crew and a TV actor. Okay, I think I can see where this is going. Like that was kind of my mindset about it, and it was one of those things that when it was canceled, even with all that in mind, I was like, damn, I really would have liked to see where that was gonna go.
I agree because, well, I mean, if you really think about it, Kojima is the pioneer of the 15-minute cutscene. Let's be honest, with Metal Gear Solid 1, it all started from him. So that would have definitely transitioned over into Silent Hills if it happened. Whether it's good or not, that remains to be seen because, like I said before, the game did get canceled before we saw any gameplay, any other trailers outside of the one where there was a kid with a bowling ball and there was guys with his head severed and there was like centipedes coming out and it was weird. I think it would have been great on the monster designs and also like maybe some of the lore interspersed with the game. It's just the gameplay that would have been like, is this going to be highly cinematic or is it going to be an actual game? And that's where the contention lies in. I'm not too negative. I'm not too negative about it because I seen people, I'm not going to name names, but they were like, well, Kojima has done no good games, and I know that's a fucking lie because MGS3 is sitting in my collection right now. So it just remains to be seen, and it's just a casualty of old Konami heads hating Kojima.
Yeah, it's just basically a bunch of what ifs at this point. Unless we can see into an alternate universe, there's no way to know.
Well,
I mean,
the
at
thing
the end
is
of the day,
that
like,
we
the
do.
biggest thing was that Konami like had no official announcements. It's their product, and they didn't like do anything with it. So
Here's the
like,
thing,
to
though.
have
We
somebody
do
else,
have a little bit of a peek into what might have been because we saw what those three would come out with if they were given the freedom to make what they wanted, and that was Death Stranding.
That's true.
And so however you feel about Death Stranding reflects probably how Silent Hills would have turned out with the three of them.
I don't actually agree with that statement because Kojima had complete reign. Sorry if you hear that. Some morons on the motorcycle outside. Kojima had complete free reign of Death Stranding because it was his IP. Because Konami would give him a restriction on at least on Silent Hill.
I mean,
'Cause
yeah,
he always has a restriction.
that's also
on him.
true. With Metal Gear Solid 5, they cut out Chapter 3, which was the end game of the story. So obviously they put a leash on Kojima. I feel it's like this: if you put restrictions on Kojima and you make him create the game that you want without going too crazy, you might get something really good like Metal Gear Solid 3. But if not, then you'll get something like Death Stranding, or a game where it's like, we have a twig, you can play with it, it's innovative. Kojima is weird, I'm not gonna lie, but he is a good game director.
There are some cases of these sort of visionaries perhaps needing some kind of limits to focus their efforts on, rather than just being allowed to do whatever they want. And I can see what you mean.
Case in point, Death Stranding.
Yeah.
Oh God, Death Stranding.
But
and I wonder if like the sink baby, the kitchen sink abortion baby from Silent Hills was supposed to be your companion in that
No,
game.
I think that's just a scare tactic. It was talking to you. I was like, well, this is weird. Like, if we talk about the PC demo, we'd be here for like literally 7 hours, so we gotta move on.
Yeah, we'd be. Yeah, let's move on.
I could read the next one, Ren.
Go ahead.
Let's see. What were your thoughts when Konami decided to outsource Silent Hill to Western developers? Honestly, mixed, because Team Silent had already set a high bar, so there was no way to live up to that. I thought I was gonna say Homecoming was all right. I mean, you still had Akira Yamaoka on, and there's some cool monster designs. Also, Origins, well, yeah, it had trouble development, but I thought it was okay. Shattered Memories, I think it's fine. There's some pretty cool stuff with like the psychological stuff with Kaufman, and it did try to be unique in its own way.
I like the plot twist for that game in particular. Like, I thought initial impression it was going to be like a trash remake of Silent Hill 1 though, but I came out a little pleasant surprised because reason being because I was binge watching lore videos, right? And so when I got to like Shattered Memories, I was quite surprised on what the game is and trying to do though. Not that great of a game. I won't lie about that or sugarcoat it. But at least the plot twist alone was definitely legendary in the series, in my honest opinion.
It's one of the better Western made Silent Hill games. I'll say that.
The main problem with the Western games is they keep trying to emulate the older games without doing anything like new or like add on to it. Because the problem is, like with Westernization, is I don't have anything against it, but usually when you gives in like an IP to someone else who's that they've never worked on this before, it can sort of go both ways. It can either be a really good game or a really bad game, and
and
the problem is,
I was gonna also add on, and also Konami kind of meddled a lot. Like with Downpour, they had Korn do a song for it.
That's true. Oh God, Korn.
It was just the opening. The rest of the soundtrack was Daniel Lick.
Yeah, I know for the opening song. Remember Korn?
It was actually just Jonathan Davis, not Korn.
Oh yeah, I forgot. They sort of failed to understand what made the series work as well, which is another issue. Because I don't know, the plots of Homecoming and Downpour are just so weird. Like Homecoming had promised to be good, and I was actually kind of like digging what I played, but as I was going through the game, I was like, "This is just Silent Hill 2, man. Like, there's really nothing unique about this game." And Downpour was weird. It was good and bad in both aspects. I liked it until I got to the very end, and the Boogeyman, aka Poor Man Pyramid Head.
I don't know what is it with Downpour though, but something about it just didn't sit right. There's something about the game I can't quite describe it though, but it didn't sit, just does not nailed it for me. Like it has some of the things that done right. Like I do like the fact that you have at least options to play the game like you want to for the most part. Mm-hmm. But the scariest thing about that game really is the freaking frame rate and that black hole when it comes in. Like your console's gonna die.
Oh, I remember the black hole. I know you're talking about the chase scenes. They were honestly like the fact that they're so blatant is like they were not as good as Silent Hill 3's, because it's just like you're just running from this thing and the camera focuses on it and you look behind you and it's like, okay, I just gotta open this valve and I'll get away, I'm good. I really didn't feel any danger during those sequences, to be honest.
Oh, Ren, remember when the game took weapons away from you? Remember that? It took ammo and guns from you?
Really?
I was like, what game does this? Yeah, I'm not kidding you. Like, at certain points in the game, you actually lose your weapons. I'm not even kidding you. Like, I once had a shotgun. I was like, alright, I'm about to kill some monsters. Cutscene. Where's my shotgun? Where is it?
Fuck.
Did the game take my shotgun away?
Okay,
Oh, come on, dude.
the main criticism I keep hearing about Homecoming, like going back to that, is people say that the combat is way too good and your character is way too efficient. I've seen a video of a guy fighting like a spider-like boss, and all he did was ran up to it with a knife, cut it like about 10 times, and it was dead. And
Yeah, the knife is way overpowered.
It was so disappointing.
I mean, I won't lie though. That's not necessarily a negative for me though, because like the dude, sorry, he's a military vet.
Yeah.
No, he's not.
Oh, I forgot the plot
Spoil-
twist.
Hey, good. You just killed the
Well,
spoil.
for most of the game, you think he is.
Yeah, I know. Again, that kind of killed the setting though. But okay, yeah, he's not though. But let's be honest here though. Not everybody needs to like control like shit and be good at fighting though. But granted, yeah, the knife is overpowered, very overpowered.
Yeah, it just made it too easy. Like, Silent Hill combat is clunky to a sense. Like, you run around, you smack something with a pipe or a 2x4, and then it's dead. However, that being said, I'm talking about a guy just runs up on a boss and kills it. I've never seen that even in the older games, unless you're really, really good at it. So that's why it was kind of...
Well, that's like hit or miss too, because some of the like bosses in the first game, you could like gun them down so easy.
Yes, some of them are pretty exploitable.
Like the moth.
It definitely gets better in 2, so yeah.
Same with the comments on Hill was never like the game's strength. It was more so like the exploration puzzles, but you get the idea.
And anytime you did play on hard or something, it was just more enemies. It just took more time or something, or you would just run around more obstacles.
Oh yeah.
All right, I guess we're done with this question, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess I'll
right.
just like add like really quick that just I was like super excited when I knew like the other teams were gonna like make an attempt, but we all know how that went.
Yep.
Yeah, and all I was gonna say is it's been hit or miss with me depending on the game.
I definitely agree. All right, I guess I'll go ahead and read up number 6. What would be your ideal Silent Hill game going forward if the story was crafted by you?
Are you as crazy as Hideo Kojima? That's the first question you got to ask yourself. I think. If the answer's no, then this is a difficult question. If the answer's yes, then well, have fun.
I imagine you're going to pull a renegade with this question though, but I don't know if you're going to say it on air.
I would definitely do something akin to what they were kind of hinting at in the in PT, sort of like have it focus around an Amityville horror-esque situation of an entire family being murdered, and have basically like all the extrapolations and all of these branches and all that stemming from that one event that kickstarted a chain that destroyed Silent Hill, essentially. And finding out, what happened that night and why, and having that really be the focus of the investigation.
I want another female protagonist.
Oh yeah, definitely.
There hasn't been many, has there? Actually, thinking about
for
it.
Silent Hill, well, there was Orphan too that had a female protagonist for most of it.
I've no knowledge of that one, I'm afraid. So
I think they were mobile games. Yeah.
Yeah, they were Japanese mobile games.
Oh, right. So since
you can read the plot synopsis basically, but you can't play them. There were a lot of mobile games over in Japan actually for Silent Hill. I think there's 4 or 5, but you can pretty much only read the plot at this point.
Yeah.
So, like, what kind of story would you do with that?
Something like like Orphan had a really interesting like story design. I think that they flipped between two characters and they were children. So just having something that either had like a feel like Rule of Rose where it was all kids where they didn't understand what was going on half the time and either like laughed at the fact that stuff was scary. Like could you imagine like a little girl like running around after Pyramid Head the whole like game and just like, thinking like, oh, he's just, funny looking and just like having something that was like kind of that like feel the whole like sort of the game like where some of the stuff they're just like, oh, I'm not really seeing that, he's just my imaginary friend, my mommy says he'll go away sometime, like, and just having like something that's just that sort of feel and having like the adults, like if there are any in it, just like so horrified whenever they run into any of that and have like the sort of reaction that anyone would when they run into something like that when it's like a child saying something, or to have something that's more like a Fatal Frame feel where like the story's like a lot more like fleshed out with details, which is how I felt like Silent Hill 4 did it.
I said my sort of piece on Twitter. The only thing I said I would do, and I'm kind of interested to see, is what would happen if the town affects somebody who essentially didn't mean to murder so many people, but it was a freak accident. And I think that would play into some very cool monster design. Like, I thought about flight attendant or something, or aircraft guy.
Bus driver.
Yeah, he just crashes the bus and he doesn't realize that he took like about 30 people with him, and then he wakes up and he sees like people that were on the bus with him, or they have like glass all over their bodies or whatever, and they sort of blame him for the incident, and he's like, no, I didn't mean to do this, it was an accident. So I would,
you want a theme around guilt?
Yeah, guilt. I would love to see something like that, actually.
It'd be interesting to see something that was like a PTSD sort of perspective too, where the character like either like does or doesn't know all the time what's happened, and sometimes they'll have like memory flashbacks that could be like.
That's what I was hoping Homecoming would be.
Yeah, like actually Jacob's Ladder, like the guy coming back from the war and seeing all his war buddies either dead or manifesting themselves as creatures, and I think that would be also interesting to see.
Actually, no, it gave me ideas though, because technically Silent Hill already does this sort of with like the 7 Deadly Sins, right? So imagine you go through one game, you have all like you go through all like paths of the sins, right? Each path you have one person that represents that thing, and you must go through the obstacles to either defeat them or like relieve them of their sins, or whatever, that kind of thing. I think that would be an interesting idea for Silent Hill if the concept could work with it.
I'd actually always. Oh, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Just.
No, you could go.
Go ahead.
No, you're fine.
That was all I was throwing in, was just like the movie 7 have something that's like a Silent Hill twist.
I had always kind of played around with the idea, like, because I really like the Silent Hill games growing up. I had always I aspired at one point that I wanted to get into game development and design, and I had always thought, what would I do with these certain IPs from various different things that I like, and I sort of like the idea of maybe a Silent Hill game where you as the protagonist are not like guilty, or you have some sort of overbearing sin, or maybe you do, but it's not so heavy-handed as something like what James went through. Maybe it's just, I don't know, you kicked a puppy when you were younger or something. So something minor, but like there are other people in the town and you end up experiencing their nightmares, like as you go, like what they're dealing with. So they kind of touched on that with Silent Hill 2, where there were certain segments where it was like James sort of transitioned into, but they didn't really go further than that. It was like these one-off little instances where you're actually seeing what is going on with these other characters. I think that would actually be cool if you actually like actively played a part in other characters, turmoils and stuff, and trying to help them either cope with it, or maybe, it could be like one of those things where there's a karma system where you can help them or you just don't help them, sort of thing.
It won't be like Infamous, like your actions will deter how the story turns out or how people will react to you.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
could kind of see that. Yeah.
I can't say honestly. It's really hard to come up with my own concept for a plot for like a Silent Hill game.
Actually, I just realized this. I'm gonna read off number 7 real quick because it's still technically in tandem with 6. 6. If you were to give Silent Hill to a studio or a company, like who you would give it to, since Konami didn't do jack shit with it.
Blue Point Games.
But
I mean, I'm talking about creating a new IP because Blue Point just make
Oh.
remasters.
yeah.
Okay.
I'll let other
Mm,
people go
can't
because I have a
say.
couple. I have a couple with
I
this. So
know. I had
Uh,
already
like,
mentioned one with
you-
having something like Fatal Frame, so having like Tecmo or somebody like jump
Yeah,
in
but
and throw something
Tecmo.
together.
Yeah,
More
but
of like a
Tecmo's
publisher.
kind of mixed, honestly,
Mhm.
considering they
Especially
have.
with 5.
But they
Ugh,
would have
yeah.
something that would be different. It'd be really different, whatever they did.
Unless you're unless you like work really close with them, then I wouldn't really trust Tecmo that much.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, considering they made 4 bangers out of 5 of Fatal Frame, though, I think it would be fine though. Just 5 was just. Whew, I
Well,
ain't getting that.
Fatal Frame 4 had its own issues. Like there was a game-breaking bug that they refused to
I
fix.
ain't talking about the technical issues. I'm talking about the game itself, the structure of the story and all that. Like 5 was not a hit. And I'm pretty sure a lot of people will agree with it.
And then my other one probably would be just to get something that would be ridiculous and different and, have like something that people could be like really like controversial about would be Rockstar.
Why?
Yeah, I would say Rockstar would be good.
They would do
Oh,
something
really?
really interesting.
That would be cool, actually. Like
They would go farther into like the like storylines, like where they wouldn't pull any punches. They would just
The-
go there.
I would agree with you though,
Motherfuckers
but
made Manhunt, like they
Mhm.
but the
wouldn't.
problem with Rockstar is that their storytelling is honestly not good. They could do good characters though,
And
but
that's why
storytelling
they would
is
work
not their
with
strong point.
Konami, where they would get
I don't-
something good. Imagine
I
like
think
some of their
Red
games
Dead
with a good
Redemption 2
storyline.
storytelling is fantastic.
Oh, I agree. Red Dead 2 story is great. I think it's probably one of their best stories in a long time.
Rockstar was one of my choices. My other choice, even though I'm not a big fan of their games, I think they'd be pretty good at Silent Hill. From Software.
Oh yeah, that would be
Really?
really
Well,
interesting.
they made a few horror games in the past.
Shadow
Yeah,
Tower.
like I think they do an interesting job with Silent Hill.
I think so too.
It's the Dark Souls of Silent Hill.
I'm a simple man. Give it to Capcom.
The enemy design.
Yeah,
the
Red.
level
Yeah,
design.
I am half agreeing with that too, because so long as they don't give it like the half-ass treatment of some of the games, like 3.
I only want Capcom to do it if James Sunderland comes back all fucking jacked up on steroids and punches a fucking room. That's what I want.
No, he needs to go hand in hand with a pyramid head. Just
That's
snap
what
the
I'm
sword,
talking about.
snap the sword, and use it against him.
Yeah, but
That
like,
is, I'd be down.
in all seriousness, I think they've done a decent job remaking 2, and 3. I mean, people say that 3 is a terrible remake, and I kind of agree that it has its issues, but it's still a good game to play. So gameplay wise, I think Silent Hill would be great in their hands. It's just the story and content that are like really questionable, but I would just give them a shot and see what they could do with it.
I agree. I agree with that.
So for me, this is going to sound kind of weird. I would probably want it more as like a spin-off title than to try to like revitalize the series with like a mainline entry. But because of how successful their last 2 games were, I'd really like id to take a look at like doing like a freaking just awesome over the top FPS game set in a Silent Hill setting where you actually get to face like a bunch of just crazy abominations and just have like all this crazy gore and like these fatality kills like you can as like Doomslayer in the Doom games. So
No,
I think it would be
do you
fun.
one better. I do
Just
you one
cross it
better.
over with Doom at that point.
No, I do you one better though. I think Arcane Studios could potentially make a good Silent Hill game, so long as they don't make it like too Dishonored like, I should say. Because they do have the atmosphere and whatnot right down for their games though. Just they need to like say imagine that in Silent Hill setting. I think they could pull it off. Just like, of course without the weird superpowers and whatnot.
We could get Platinum to just like, copy paste Metal Gear Rising Revengeance and just freaking be Pyramid Head instead.
Oh, that would be cool, though.
That'd be hard as hell, dude. That'd be cool.
That'd be cool.
Irrational probably would have been a pretty interesting choice too.
But are we finished with this?
Who did the Alice games? Like
I don't know.
American McGee's Alice and Alice Returns.
I think that was his own company.
Was it straight up? Because it just says EA as like the publisher, but Rogue Entertainment.
No, yeah, I think it's his own company
maybe.
that does the development.
They'd probably do a really good job as well.
Yeah, I could see that.
I mean, essentially, it is basically like a Silent Hill game just set in Wonderland.
Yeah, basically.
But
Rogue Entertainment, that's what it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah, I saw that. I said it, and then it said they were in the same office as ID Software.
Are we finished with this question? We move on to number 8.
Maybe, yeah.
Drill?
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to pick another studio because I just would really want Team Silent back, but that's probably not an option.
No.
You might as well give it to Sony.
Yeah, it would be Sony's baby at that rate because they have the Team Silent developers, or they had a couple of them, I believe. I think they all got spread out, right?
Yeah, they're part of Japan Studio though, but I think they're mostly the Team Gravity people, the Gravity Rush team, mostly.
Yep.
Yeah, so that's a pipe dream.
Give it to 2K games so that we have to pay for all the monsters.
Just one more I'd like to throw in out there. I don't know if any of you guys have played the game called Darkwood by Acid Wizard Studio.
Ooh.
It's really freaking good, so I could definitely see them doing a Silent Hill game. I think it would be in good hands if they tried.
Yeah, although the budget differences might be a tall order.
Yeah, obviously.
All right, so I guess we can move on to number 8. I'll read that. What are your thoughts on both Silent Hill movies? I'm gonna make mine real quick. I kind of have a guilty pleasure for the first one, but the second one, oh god, that movie's awful.
It's
Dude,
pretty
he fell into alcoholism because after Game of Thrones ended, he's like, I'm gonna have to go back and make another Silent Hill for money.
Yeah.
Yeah,
much.
That's why.
I mean, I do find it weird that they switched the genders or the main character for the first film.
I could appreciate the first movie though, but the second one's doo-doo butter. It's garbage. It's not even worth my time.
I kind of wish we would have had Sean Bean as the main character in the first one.
He probably won't die then.
Yeah, Sean Bean would have been a great lead. It's unfortunate that the actress that they got, I don't know her name off the top of my head to play the
Radha Mitchell.
Radha Mitchell?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, she didn't. It's strange. She can carry the movie as a lead, but at the same time, she didn't really have the acting skill to make it as compelling as it could have been. But that being said, I do really like the movie. Like Ren said, it's a guilty pleasure for me, and I also enjoy the second one, mostly just because it's the most hilarious thing ever that this buzzsaw lady straight up squares up on Pyramid Head.
I sort of
they have
like
a fight.
Like they're hokey movies, but especially like the second one. But I definitely like, the first one had like a really good like eerie feel, like it felt like a Silent Hill, and the second one was just
it's just
there were bits
stupid.
of
Like
that
it's
were, interesting.
They tried so many techniques, and I think it's because of that stupid freaking 3D they were trying to shoehorn into the movie, because they call it Silent Hill Revelation 3D, and
Mhm.
jump scares with Pop Tarts, and I'm like, oh my god, and
Oh,
just
God.
It also had half the budget of the first one.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
I mean-
that back to switching the lead to just being female in general, just like I thought that was fine. The only thing I hated about the first one was that they like tried to tie in that like whole like, oh, your mother like blah blah blah, like, and it's like, no, her mother was trash and needed to be burnt with fire. Like, don't be telling me like that, oh, like mothers are supposed to be like these like saviors, blah blah, like, no, that like totally ruined the whole story for me. Like, we get to that point and I'm just like, no.
you mean them
ruined
trying to
this
make her
movie.
sympathize
Butchered
with Dahlia?
Yeah, they made her like a good person, like a
And
sympathetic
Sybil
character.
even said,
Yeah.
like, mother is God in the eyes of a child. And it's like, her mother, like, you know, is the one who did it in the
I
game.
know.
Yeah.
She,
That
like,
that was
put
what
her on a
disappointed me too.
pyre. It ruined it for me. Like, where it's like, I like the film. I can't even think of it as Silent Hill sometimes because of that and them splicing in the, like, you know, like Connecticut, like coal fire story. It's like, okay, that's would have been a cool movie on its own. And the director heard about it and was just like, I have to put this in. Okay, do that in a movie that's not like already got a fan base who's gonna tear it apart. Like, come on.
Yeah, I was upset. So many people now is like, hey, do you know Silent Hill is based on a real time? No, it fucking isn't.
Yeah, no.
It's not
No.
Centralia.
Ugh.
That's the movie. But as for the first movie, I think it got the look and feel of the game really well. I liked how they recreated certain, camera angles from the first game and whatnot.
Yeah.
I thought it was a real beautiful movie. Second movie, not so much. But I did like the little Easter eggs to Silent Hill 3 in there. But it's cheesy.
Mhm.
Heather, you're goofy fun inside.
I definitely say that for me, the first movie, I have an appreciation for it because to me, I've always sort of viewed Silent Hill as sort of an anthology series, like that you really don't have to play one to get any, to get the value out of the other. And so with all the nods that they did in the first one, that's kind of the thing I was looking for. And me and my older brother being so heavy fans of the series, when we went and saw that in theaters, that was kind of the thing. We were pointing out various aspects that, like, oh, they took that from that game, oh, they took that from the other game, holy shit, Pyramid Head's here, why is he here? sort of thing. And that was actually a funny thing that as a little side tangent, we discussed about that before going into the theater. I said, what if Pyramid Head's in the movie? And my brother just shakes his head and he's like, nah, he's not going to be in the movie. And then we lost our shit when he
Watch the
showed
trailer?
up.
Oh yeah.
Damn.
Dude, that was crazy, man. when he
But
showed up, like,
I
At least
think
spin-off.
I think it could have worked if they had gone and done like if with the sequel movie, if they had instead tried so heavily to like base it off source material. I think it would have worked a lot better had it just been its own cinematic universe.
Oh, definitely, yes.
That way, like, you can kind of open the door for any sort of story and kind of just build your own universe. Get all the fan servicey stuff out in the first one, have all the little references here and there that, veterans of the series are going to pick up on, which that's fine. You get all that out in the first movie, and then every additional movie after, you can sort of expand on the world and sort of build a new narrative that's exclusive to the movies and not trying to emulate so much of the source material, because that's really what happened with the sequel, is that it pulled so much from Silent Hill 3 and then tried to emulate that with the elements that were established in the movie universe, and just wasn't a good mix. It just needed to either be one or the other. You either just make verbatim Silent Hill 3 on the big screen, or you do a completely new movie that's based on the pre-established universe you started in the first movie. And so I think that there is more potential. Like, I have heard that they're planning to do a new Silent Hill movie.
Yeah,
So-
Gons is apparently going to be making a new one. It's just a rumor now, though.
Yeah, so if that does come to light, I think if they try to do something new, that would work. But if they try to like sequel after what happened at the end of Revelations, like I don't know what it would be like. I don't think it'll
It's
be
like
an enjoyable
three
movie.
sequel things in there. They had like the downpour bus. They had Travis.
Yeah, I
They
know.
had
that,
Harry doing a James thing, looking for his wife in Silent Hill.
oh God, yeah, I know. There's a lot of things they could have gone off with, but it'd be really interesting to see what they did. But as it stands, like I genuinely feel that second movie sort of killed any potential that Silent Hill had as a movie, you know, and that's really, again, another, you know, podcast in of itself, but video game movies in general just seem to kind of, you know, that's really what it is. It's either the first movie does well enough to warrant a sequel, or it doesn't do well at all.
I swear, it's like a curse with Silent Hill. It's like it's doomed to fail regardless of what's going to happen after Team Silent Love. Because the first movie was okay.
Pretty much.
Second movie killed the franchise as a movie series, and then we got the current stuff. So I was like, this series cannot catch a break.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, remember that scene when what's my bad if I interrupted, but you guys remember that scene when what's his name, Douglas got killed in the elevator? I was pissed, man.
He was
yeah.
barely in the movie. I was like,
Yeah,
wow,
like
they
why
killed him
even
off.
he's like a central character in the third game, so why even kill him off?
Well, I mean, it's not as bad as Wesker getting his foot cut off in the Resident Evil movies and dying.
Yeah, and they just strike.
Well,
But
yeah,
the Resident Evil movies, they have their own story based on the pre-established universe. That's what you're looking for, right?
I'm not even gonna get into that. Well, we already have a podcast on that.
But yeah,
good.
do you think? I was gonna say, do you think they could genuinely save like the live action series if they just reboot it?
I think that's what they're gonna do. I think that's what Gans is gonna try to do. I don't think it's gonna continue. At least I hope he doesn't.
Save anything if you reboot it.
Yeah, that would probably be the best approach. I would say. I would think it would be really hard with all the stuff that they established at the end of Revelations to really go off of any one thing. And if they tried to like make a movie that includes all those things, and it's not just one cohesive narrative with one, you know, set of characters, that it's like, oh, we're gonna have these branching stories with 4 or 5 different characters all going on at the same time, it'd be really hard to follow. So I think it would just be best to either reboot it, or if they're going to do anything, just, you know, maybe try to do something new. You know, try to maybe kind of take some bits and pieces to get inspiration, and then just kind of make a Silent Hill movie based off that, instead of trying to like muddle with already, you know, transpired narratives and change a couple things around and then just add a bunch of fan service in like the first one.
Would you be fine if they decided to say we're ignoring Revelation, sort of like a Halloween, the recent one that just came out, where it's like we're ignoring everything except the first movie? You think
If they fucking if they give it a subtitle, if they don't just call it Silent Hill again?
Yeah, that's also true.
Yeah. I mean, I'd rather they just start with a clean slate, honestly.
I mean, it's been long enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they should just reboot, because that after that second movie, that is a lot of stuff to work with. Plus, it tied into the first a little bit, so it's like, yeah, just do it over. Don't even touch it. Do it over.
I mean, I'd rather it be original and kind of tie into the universe rather than just adapt the games.
Rather they just adapt the games directly, because like the games have such good stories. I feel like it's a disservice to the people who wrote those stories not to adapt them to mediums for other people to experience them.
You know,
especially because with the format of film, there are different techniques that you can use to tell the same story that aren't available in video games, and so like it would just be great to see those stories translated without being fucking butchered.
Yeah, like the one thing I did like from the movie is how they transitioned to the other world with like the walls peeling. I thought that was kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
What about just like
it's a good effect? Yes.
What about just like CGI, where mostly the people who care about the franchise, they have their hands on it, and you see how that turned out for some of the RE movies. I mean, they aren't super great but the CGI RE movies are at least entertaining to watch over the live action ones.
I mean, I wouldn't mind it, but I feel like Silent Hill's grounded enough to work in live action. Plus, it'd give them a chance to do practical.
That's true.
Be kind of cool. Instead of a movie, maybe they had like a little limited series, like on Netflix or something. Maybe like an anthology series, like American Horror Story style. We get different people going into the town and whatnot. I think it would really work in that format. Like
That'd be
individual
cool.
Stories.
It'd be cool to see one where they're showing how the town gets overrun by darkness.
Or they never really focus like a lot of stuff of the past, and you know the fact that I think that Toluca Lake is like an Indian burial ground or something.
Yep.
A lot of dead bodies under there, so they could focus on that.
Sacred Land. There was also the arcade with the whole boat singing for some unknown reason. Just a lot of creepy stuff that just happened in the town that they could really go into, especially like from like the 1700s and stuff. There's a lot you can do.
Yup, I agree.
Mm-hmm.
So are we done with this one before we move on to the next question?
I think so.
All right.
One thing. I was going to throw a question out, because I don't have a lot of memory of... I never watched the second film. I don't have too much memory of the first film. I remember my prevailing thought of it was Silent Hill 1, they've taken the game, they've taken out Harry and put in a female lead instead with basically the same plot. Is that fair?
No.
No.
The antagonist is completely different. It's now like kind of a wacky Christian cult, and she's being burned alive because she's a witch, not to bring forth God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When I was watching it, I hadn't played Silent Hill for a little while, and it felt I could tell there was a lot of leads and sort of links they were drawing with the original game. It felt like they were messing about with enough of it, but that was the impression I got sometimes. That, and also I remember the film; it felt really goddamn long as well.
Honestly,
I felt it was a bit too long.
The main
but that was the
heroine was
impression I
honestly
got
kind of
sometimes.
boring.
Yeah, there was they could have done with cutting maybe about 10-15 minutes, I think, out of that film.
I remember.
Too long.
I mean, to be fair, there's not much to Harry's character aside from just.
He was added in because the studio was like, it's just all women. You need to add a dude in there, so they put in Chris De Silva, the husband character.
Makes no sense.
Yeah, it's such a
last
shame.
minute in the movie.
Yeah, I remember the director saying the reason why he changed Harry's characters because he thought having a mother, having the whole paternal thing would make more sense.
You can kind of do that with a dude, though.
Which is kind of an insult.
Yeah.
I mean, dads really care about their kids too. That's
Yeah,
part of what made Harry pretty great. You know?
Yeah, I
is he-
actually even took offense to that because come on now, not everything needs to be on moms. Like, get some fathers, credit.
Yeah,
here.
I mean, fathers are just as important as mothers.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, you also have to look at the genre too, because it kind of follows the trends where in action movies, it's usually the father that's the protector. Harrison Ford, give me back my family kind of thing. Where in the horror genre, it's usually the reverse, where it's the mothers who are fighting the monsters and defending the children and all that. So it could
It
have.
depends on the series, probably.
Well,
'Cause I
for
can
the
think of
most part, I'm
more
saying it's
where it's like the dad who ends up dying or something, like in so many series.
Or the mom is the monster, like in
Yeah.
freaking The Grudge.
Yeah, that's also true. It could go either way, as far as I see it for horror movies. Like either the mom dies or the dad dies, or maybe they're really the killer.
Yeah.
But I guess we could move on to the next one, number 9.
Yeah.
Joe, you want to read that?
Daybreaker.
Oh no,
Okay.
you can go ahead.
Number 9. The Otherworld is a location that warps Silent Hill into a nightmare realm. What is your favorite Otherworld transformation in this franchise? Describe your favorite specifically.
Oh man,
There's so many.
I have one.
Yeah.
Too many, man.
I liked the transition from when you went from the historical society underneath the lake into the prison. I thought that was really creepy. You're just going down this long staircase for like a minute with the foghorn and stuff, and then all of a sudden you're in a prison that doesn't exist anymore. I thought that was really good in Silent Hill 2, and I also really liked the switch from when you watched the videotape in the hotel. You were kind of
Yes.
seeing
I was gonna
James's
say that one.
delusion of the hotel, and then when you watch the tape and realize, hey, he killed his wife, you see how the hotel really is. It's burned, it's waterlogged and whatnot because the hotel burned down. I thought that was a really cool transition, and the warping doors and things like that.
Yeah, I was going to say that one as well. Completely agree.
I'll go quickly,
Yeah.
but my favorite one, it's really hard, but I really like Silent Hill 3's Otherworlds. I thought they were really
Yeah,
done
that's
super
what I
well,
was gonna
especially
say.
in oh yeah. I really liked in the hospital. That was really fucking creepy. Like, when you see those faces or those realistic mouths.
Oh, and the walls are like moving constantly, like blood
Yeah,
effects.
yeah.
When it's
That
like,
mirror,
that was
that mirror
creepy.
part was really, really creepy.
yeah, I was thinking of the mirror part as well.
Oh yeah, the mirror. I
The
almost forgot about
puzzles
that.
when you
Yeah.
were stuck in like the hospital, like to like the other world with like the orange walls. Like there are a couple rooms that it's like when you first go into them, it's like, should I leave?
Yeah.
I would have
I
thought.
totally remember
I would have
had
thought.
some
What?
weird
Sorry, go on.
transitions. Oh, I thought you were saying about 4.
No, yeah, no, you can say that.
Yeah, you can go. You can go. I'm done.
Oh,
I was
just
gonna say,
yeah.
My favorite one, my favorite transition would be Bitch Elementary in the first one. When
Oh, yeah.
Going to the clock tower.
yeah,
That's creepy.
yeah, because it works to the strength of the game that they had the technical limitations, so they really had to do like the transformations as lo-fi as they possibly could. So when you get to shit like that, like going into the clock tower, and then you're like, oh, wait a second.
It's different.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a great moment because then like you're at that point where you're solving puzzles and you're like at elementary school and you're like, all right, I got this, and then they switch the whole thing on you and you're like, fuck, I don't think I'm ready for this.
Yeah.
Even earlier than that, I actually reckon my favorite is probably the very first one at the very start of the game.
Oh,
Like
the
the very
alley.
first thing you do, at the very beginning of the game, the first one, when you go into the alley. I think it did an incredible job because going into the game, you kind of have maybe a remote idea of what you're getting yourself into, but you don't. And so you have the car crash. You're trying to obviously follow the daughter and whatever else, and then you go into the alley. And it does such a great job of just slowly, not just building suspense, but also building that kind of feeling of just unease and uncertainty as to what exactly is going on, which it couldn't really ever do particularly ever again. Going to the alley and things slowly starting to not make as much sense and slowly getting kind of crazy. And then all of a sudden, once you realize, oh, this is really bad, then it suddenly seals itself off, and you're like surrounded by enemies and all sorts of. I remember I first played that scared the shit out of me. I was like, holy Christ! I was really unsettled by that. I think that's probably one of the best ones. The first one they ever did. I think it set the tone
Yeah.
for the series so goddamn well.
And just
The
fact that
camera
you
angles
couldn't
too were really great.
escape
Yeah,
either,
yes, as
and-
well. There was good use of that sort of you going in and then suddenly the camera was going to get more and more kind of disjointed and angled and it was ingenious, really well put.
What did you say, Lily? Sorry, we cut you
I
off.
was gonna go into how in that area you can't actually escape or go back or anything. Everything's totally completely different. Like you're in a new area,
Yeah.
and to continue the game you have to die. So
Yeah, exactly. And I
sets
think
up for-
I'd played plenty of Resident Evil before that, so I was just like, "Oh, that's not good. Right, let's get out of here." And then suddenly,
yeah,
oh, I can't leave. Oh god.
it's a totally different feel.
Yeah, exactly. And you realize that you're in a really, really bad place. And then obviously you wake up in the cafe with Sybil and all that. But yeah, I think probably the very first one I did, I don't know if I go as far as say it's iconic, because I don't think too many people actually physically remember it. But I think if
I think it
it
is.
was one of the first things you did, like it's so memorable.
I think it is.
Yeah.
I mean, they replicated it in the movie. They made sure to replicate it because people know that scene.
I can't remember. I've so long since I've seen the movie.
Yeah, they copied the actual angles and stuff from the
Yeah.
game
I have
as
no
she
memories
went
of
to
this
the alley.
happening. No memories. Wow.
Yeah, it was super cool.
She was actually able to escape, and she didn't have to die. The monsters,
Damn it.
like they
Not following source material.
sunlight.
Terrible.
Yeah. It just kind of like makes it like.
Well, she didn't. She got grabbed a bunch of times from the Grey Children,
Yeah.
and then she fainted, just like Harry.
Well, the Grey Children actually like dissolved into ash.
Oh,
too.
yeah.
So
That's
they
true.
couldn't have like actually killed her. Like Harry had to die.
I'm
Are we
simple.
done with this question?
I didn't go. I didn't go. I just was gonna say, you know, I'm simple. I just like the fact that the other world in Silent Hill 1 was awesome when you go outside and you see that the entire streets are like literally gates that you're walking on, and I thought that was really cool. And the walls are all dilapidated and it's raining, and even the enemies change, I think, because they turn into literal red demons when you're fighting them. So I thought that was cool.
Yeah, I was gonna say my favorite one would probably be the entire like level of Silent Hill 3's like chapel at the end.
Oh yeah, it's a good
Where
level.
Oh
that-
yeah, I remember
The
that
whole
actually.
thing is just like so bizarre, and it just has like so many like moments where you either see Valtiel like crawling in the walls, or you like can come out like into like areas where it's all like wire and you wouldn't be able to get across, where it almost looks normal outside but something's off. And like
There's a lot of creepy stuff in the background too.
It has like such a great like atmosphere, just room to room, like its own. I love the map is even different, like everything.
It's so cute.
Yeah. And that's just it's like you're going back to like when she was young and not even the same person.
The worst words ever. There is no map of this area. Figure it out when you're in the other world.
Yeah.
Oh, I guess you weren't a fan of Nowhere, huh?
Nope, I wasn't.
I didn't mind it. I think if you're honest, an area it's like an area that's kind of like deliberately kind of like being a bit maybe confusing. I mean, it feels pretty otherworldly to me, if you ask me. I think it fits quite well.
I think I just end up. I streamed this yesterday with the first one. I think I just end up checking every door, and then I wind up having that problem where I'm like, I'm on the same floor again, checking the same damn door because no map.
As a gameplay mechanic, I think your mileage on that can vary significantly. But I think as far as like its plot's concerned, you know, somewhere that's kind of unfamiliar and like it can be a bit confusing, I think makes sense.
Oh, it's perfect. In that regard, it's absolutely fantastic.
Cool to revisit little areas, because it was like at that point we were kind of delving into Alessa's state of mind. So it was kind of neat to see little glimpses into her own past, like, you know, praying at the altar, hiding in the attic, crying, and stuff like that. I really liked that level, but I agree, the map, no map can be pretty rough.
Yeah. Especially if it's your first time going through
Mhm.
that, it is like, oh boy, it's not easy. There's some nasty
Pretty
shit in
rough.
there as well. So
Although it could be argued that it adds to the experience if you like draw your own on a piece of paper as you're going through.
Yeah, I was
Well,
gonna
we
say
could
paper
do
can
that,
work.
James
Yeah,
did
you could do
that.
that.
James did that in the labyrinth.
Oh,
idea.
I remember that.
Well, that's
actually.
exactly what happens in Silent Hill 3. That level, she just draws it, and it's all like in crayon.
Oh yes, because that's all she had, wasn't it? Yeah, it was a nice
Mhm.
touch.
It was.
I really keep
Alright.
forgetting about 3. But yeah, go ahead, Brendan.
We're done here. Are we good?
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. So next question. What a docket. Go ahead and read this off. What is your favorite and least favorite creature design of the series?
There's probably only one winner here, isn't there? Realistically, it's hard not to say Pyramid Head, isn't it? Like, it's
Unless
hard
someone
not to
else has a
say.
different answer, maybe.
The nurses.
Ran like
nurses-
some
Well,
Definitely.
that would be like the second
s-
one.
Well, I'd say the nurses are a little tired. I liked, like in the first game, they were just like normal nurses, and then after Silent Hill 2, it's like whenever they appear, they're always sexy. I wish
Well,
they'd bring back the
In
doctors.
first one, they were
I
so,
mean,
like, they have like a giant like weird hump on their back,
Yeah,
and they're just like
Well,
they're
they had
creepy looking.
they
yeah,
kind of
they're
had
really
like a
creepy.
cyst.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The first time,
they had a parasite on their back, and there was doctors too, and we never saw another doctor. It
Yeah,
was
there's
really
never a
bad.
male.
the
guess-
first time that the nurses appeared they appeared like all sexy, wasn't there a reason for that? And then after
Yeah,
that, it was
James.
just like,
Yeah,
oh,
it
let's
was
just keep it
James.
sexy just because.
It's
Yeah.
because of James' whole
His
repressive
frustration.
sexual.
Yeah, his repressed
Yeah.
sexuality.
So yeah, like in
Actually,
that context,
Well, that like
great.
had,
After
like,
that, it's like, oh, come on.
because like for James, it had like a huge like tie, and like that if he was sitting like in the hospital ever with his wife, like she's been sick for a while, so of course he's getting frustrated and he's noticing the nurses, so that's why they don't even have faces to him because he's just looking for meat.
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
guys remember Abstract Daddy from Silent Hill 2? Actually,
Yep. Yeah, Angela's dad raping her.
that monster was so like I want to say that's my favorite, just because of how like really disturbing and fucked up it is. Like when you.
I think you don't want to remember him story wise.
That was messy, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, the first enemy you see in Silent Hill 2 is really creepy too.
Straight jackets, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
think,
dude, those things are
They
disgusting.
would startle me when they would hide under cars and like pop
I
out.
know.
Oh yeah,
Oh.
that was uncomfortable.
That noise that they
Bro.
make when they're crawling, dude. Oh, I hate it.
What about like the monkeys or whatever they Silent Hill
Like,
one?
Gunheads.
The rompers
Yeah.
and wormheads. No, wormhead's the dog.
Gumheads.
Yeah.
They were.
I think I'd throw a couple others. I mean, again, I haven't played Silent Hill before, but I'm aware of like the twins.
Twin
the
victims. Yeah, that's
twin
my
victims, is that
favorite
the call?
actually.
Yeah,
and
I mean, like
before
I've
they
not
had
played the
quite a
game,
few
and I'm
creepy-
well aware of them, and they look fucking scary, and they're gonna scare me to death probably in a month. So
What about the
Good.
wheelchairs?
Oh,
yeah, they're bad enough.
Yeah.
I think one I always liked, and I always appreciate actually was probably I think it was Robbie. I think it was the rabbit from Silent Hill
Robbie the
3.
Rabbit, yes.
Right,
Yeah,
I think
Robbie.
I think
You
it
know,
was
with
really
the
cute as
bloody
well.
mouth.
Yeah, I think it wasn't so much that. I think what was really cool about him is that in this horrible, desolate world of steel and mesh and blood, you've got this nice, colourful, fluffy pink rabbit just sitting on a bench, sort of thing. Completely out of place. And then, of course, they managed to make him have a bloody mouth and just be so goddamn eerie. Like, it's just genius. Absolute
Yeah.
I kept
genius.
expecting
I
him to
agree.
move when I
That was
first
the,
played it.
same here as well. Like, I was just thinking, one of these
I
times he's going to get
know.
up and just do really bad things.
You
to
do
me.
you do fight them in the arcade.
Yeah.
Do you?
Yeah.
I almost don't know if I like that or not.
Honest.
But it's just the eeriness, and just like you're next to it, it just feels like it's just staring at you, and it's just it's playing off of the old like dolls and sort of thing that people have like fears of and that sort of. It's exactly the same, and I just think it was really well implemented. So I'd probably say Robbie, although there's some good answers here. But I mean, iconic, obviously, you have to say Pyramid Head probably, but there's
Yeah.
some really good like second and third places in the series.
Iconic. Did you guys know that Ito said that when he first created him, like half the team were against him? They thought he was too weird and that no one would like him. And
I
now
can believe that.
we got like 19 years later or whatever that he's now the icon for the game series. People are trying to putting him into everything. I think it's funny.
That's my problem with Pyramid Head is I think he should have just stayed in 2. Bringing him back kind of hurts. Like, I don't know really why they kept bringing him back. I can kind of see like maybe because of the design, but from a story point of view, it doesn't really make any sense, especially in Homecoming where he makes a cameo. I was like, aren't you supposed to be in Silent Hill 2? And then Alex becomes a Pyramid Head and his ending is okay then.
Well, the whole feel of Homecoming was like they only saw the movie. Everything from it was basically like just anything like the way it looked, like all the fans and everything. It's having
Yeah.
And having
Even-
coal fires
mm-hmm.
and ash falling in the sky.
Even-
Like they watched the movie and that was it. That was the
Well,
only
even-
source they used at all.
Well,
the
yeah,
church
even
had
now,
the symbol
they,
too.
Mm-hmm.
even now they transitioned to the other world. There's like the movie.
Yeah, but that looked cool. I didn't mind that part actually.
Well,
I was like,
yeah,
yeah, that looks really cool.
yeah. I mean, I'm actually glad they kept that aspect from the movie.
But they only did it like twice, and it's
They
always
did
like in a
Yeah.
short
Origins as
cutscene.
well. It was similar.
Yes, I think the only other thing I can think of
and
maybe is
else?
like Silent Hill 2 wise as well. Speaking of the pyramids, like the mannequins as well. I mean, I think they're probably more remembered obviously for the scene. That scene, of course, with Pyramid Head. But
Yeah.
even so, you know, having like just like things of just flailing legs coming at you, you know, with the cool lighting system, you know, it was pretty uncomfortable.
They were shiny too. It was really weird.
Mm.
And when you're running up, Nathan, I haven't even said no. It doesn't matter. When you're running towards like the historical society, and they would just jump out from the side, it would always
Yes.
They
make
were
me laugh.
thrown.
Yes.
It was so weird.
It's like
they
okay.
were roadkill. And I think that's usually what they're like into.
I think Vatael, he looks crazy in motion when you see him turning the vials. I thought that was like creepy.
Strangling nurses.
Strangling nurses, yeah, all that stuff. So I thought that was weird. I really don't have a least favorite monster design, but the only thing I'll say is that I do feel like some of the enemies in Silent Hill 1 compared to later games, they look a bit uninspired. Like you got a giant worm thing and a giant lizard walking around.
Definitely. Like,
Yeah,
my favorites, like the pterodactyl monster in the first one is probably my least favorite there. In 2, it's probably the things that skitter out from under like cars. In 3, it's probably that one boss where it's the giant worm thing. It's
oh,
like,
the split
Oh,
head.
the
I
subway
didn't
sort
need
of
to
stuff.
see that. Thanks.
I didn't like the
Yeah.
pendulums because the noises they would make were just really
Oh,
annoying.
yeah,
I
they're also
hated that
a pain in the ass.
they like cornered you so much in the third one, or
They
like
were
if
pretty
you played
brutal.
on hard, you could fall off the edges of places.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, it was
I couldn't
brutal.
tell you like how many times in the mall I fell off of edges trying to avoid those things.
Yeah.
Are you
There'd
talking?
be too many of them?
Are you talking about those big giant enemies? They look like hooks.
They were like they
Pendulums,
kind of look like horse.
they're like
flies,
metal. Yeah.
Yes,
and they
I know what the
had
ones
like
you're talking about.
spears coming out of them, and they would rotate in the air.
I don't like those or the little like dinosaur things. They look gray and they try to headbutt you.
Numb bodies?
Yeah,
I can
yeah, the bodies. They are terrible.
And
They
they
look
have
like little fetuses.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But that's all the answers I got for this one. So are we moving on?
Yeah.
Yeah, we're good.
Yep.
All right. I'll go ahead and read this off. Which scene creeped you out the most in this franchise? Oh, that's easy. So you see in Pyramid Head fucking some 2-leg half creature.
That scene.
Wow.
Oh
Like-
yeah, the whole rape
That-
scene thing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
like
scene
he
is-
was going to town on a pair of legs that doesn't have a head or anything. Like, what's going on here?
That seems iconic, man. Like when I saw that for the first time, I literally was like, "What the fuck is this?"
Could be
What
as
is
much
this?
infamous as iconic, I fear. I mean, when I first saw that, I didn't have a clue what was going on. Like, I was.
But it was
Yeah.
so dark, and
no
I'm like,
idea.
oh, yeah, he's going hot dogging. Like,
Man,
come on, man.
Good lord.
I think we talked about this earlier, where supposedly it's not actually sex, according
Yeah,
to
it's
the
not-
I mean,
director.
it doesn't look like it at all if you go back and
It's
actually
more
like,
about
watch
like
it
abuse.
without-
It's weird. I saw it and I'm like, I think that's the point though, is that it's supposed to look abnormal but similar to
Yeah,
what
it's
you
just
usually
supposed to be
see.
violent.
Yes, but I'm like, yeah, I'm going right in that closet. I would do the first thing that James does.
I don't think it was
I-
consensual, whatever the hell it was.
I think I thought his first appearance was really creepy when you
Yeah.
heard a scream and then you ran and you just saw him standing behind the bars staring at you.
Yeah.
That was really creepy. But
On
as for like a really good creep, the mirror scene in Silent Hill 3 was really good
Mm-hmm.
with the
Oh yeah.
where you're like, oh shit, I'm trapped in this room.
Too, for Silent Hill 3, where you like if you actually like do the level like correctly, because I know like a lot of people get stuck in that level and like will miss the magazine that like tells you about the ghosts, and so they like miss out on that sort of scare. But if you get that one, just it's so creepy, just like as you're like going through, because then it like colors the whole level totally different.
Also, the whole like thing with Stanley, the stalker in the
Mhm.
hospital, was also very creepy. Just overall,
And I
leaving all
bet
those notes.
liked his character so much because it's just like the way he wrote it.
Hmm
I think a good one I'll throw out here as a shout out was I think it was actually who was it? Yeah, it was Lisa Garland, and like her death in the first Silent Hill. Personally, the blood starts just kind of streaming down her face, and all that, and then you got Harry sort of just locks the door on her, and all that.
Yeah, I felt so
chaos.
bad. I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, Harry.
Yeah,
You
that
hear
was
the
the thing.
knocking.
There was a much sorrow as much as anything else, but just on a
Mhm.
visual level, especially at the time, like it was all kinds of crazy.
It's like
Um,
strangely beautiful too. Like the way it comes together. It's not. You have blood like coming out of like every orifice, but it's still not gross. I guess
mm.
it's a cool scene.
I kind of felt the same when you see that scene where you kill Sybil and she's like vomiting out the blood, and you see it streaming down her face, just like Lisa. I also thought that was kind of creepy as well. Once I saw it, it made me like really feel bad for not getting that red liquid and saving her.
That whole
Yeah,
Sybil stuff
yeah.
was all kinds of crazy. Again, and wonderfully executed as far as the game's concerned. But yeah, when you first got it, you're like, holy shit. This
Did you
ain't good.
Did you guys save Kaufman and stuff at first? I know some of my friends like for years had no idea that they could go save Kaufman in the bar and save Sybil. It was just I'm always surprised to hear
Well,
that people never did that part.
the first time I didn't, but then I read up that that's how you do it.
Hmm.
I remember playing it, and I remember thinking and looking and thinking, like, surely you must be able to. And then, because I saw the clues, but obviously with like the liquid, and there was the stuff like in the motorcycle. I'm thinking there's clearly more going on here. I think on a second playthrough, I got it in the end. The first time I couldn't work it out because there was just so much bullshit going on.
Yeah,
I was just like,
Such a shame because it was like that was the part where you learned more about the whole drugs subplot, which
yeah,
if you
which is
don't
quite
go
huge,
through
actually.
it, you don't really learn more about it.
You
which
can
is a shame.
completely miss that and not have
Mhm.
any idea of it.
Yeah,
Yeah, you're like,
you know,
what
go
was
through
with the notes in the police station? Oh,
Yeah. That's
That's
what it's about.
something.
Yeah, entire side plot which you could completely miss potentially.
I missed it at first. I was like, I didn't know what to do, and then I realized that in order to get the good plus ending, you have to do that side mission with the motorcycle. So I just went back and did it, and then I found out, oh, you can actually save Kaufman, and he gets really mad once you actually fix that thing, and he's like, you want to die here or what? It was like, okay. He's really angry all of a sudden. He's super nice.
I appreciate that they did. It's getting a bit off topic, but I appreciate they kind of went back to the Silent Hill 3 with the locket and the pendant, and there was the vial sort of thing inside. I thought that was a nice touch. They went back to that, more callback to the original. So
did
that's
anybody
a bit off topic.
try to kill Claudia first instead of just taking the pill?
Oh yes, yes, I remember this
Yeah.
now. It's all coming back to me. Goodness.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff in 3 that's like creepy. I think I mentioned a couple of the ones in the beginning.
Hold on, I'm curious. What happens if you try to open fire on Claudia?
Oh, you die immediately.
Oh,
Yes.
Yeah, you die.
Yeah.
Yep.
You get game over.
Yeah, God
It's-
comes
yeah,
forth. You die.
You're not allowed to do that. That's against the rules.
that's interesting. That's very interesting. But I think we can move on to number 12.
Who
So
wants to read that one off?
I can read it.
Yeah.
Go right ahead.
All right. The cult was a big element within Silent Hill 1 and 3. How do you feel about their storyline?
Well, given that I like the first game, I love it.
Yeah, I think it was easy. I think the first game to be a bit confused by it by times, because ultimately it encompasses a lot. You know, this sort of doom apocalyptic cult, with their own version of like a Bible and this sort of thing. It's something that I think you have to play through a game at least a couple of times to kind of get a more of an understanding of what the hell it's actually about. Because you look at it on paper, you just think they're just a bunch of complete nuttos. But then when you start delving into kind of the history, again, go into some maps and the tribal stuff, and then, it's been obviously fleshed out of Silent Hill 3, Silent Hill 4, I believe. The bad guy was also, I think he was orphaned or something by the Order, I believe it is.
No, his parents abandoned him in the
That was the one.
apartment. Yeah.
I said I have a vague idea of it. I think it's nice. It's always good to have perhaps like this kind of overbearing, I guess, antagonistic group. And again, it makes perfect sense they return to it in 3 because, of course, that's what Silent Hill 1 was largely all about. This cult trying to bring, with all the stuff of a lesser. But I think as an entry level, I think it can be a bit confusing to understand what exactly is going on at first, which isn't helped by Silent Hill's own, there's so much already going on in the game, plot-wise, that trying to understand what the cult's about and you've got all this crazy stuff going on, it can be a bit hard to get into at first.
Mm-hmm. And
Yeah,
also didn't help that they contradicted themselves too, like
Yeah.
on
Oh, did they?
purpose. Yeah, when they were writing it, there was an interview in a Swedish magazine called Level. I got it translated, and one of the quotes I think was from Sato. They said, or no, it was Kiriyamaka. They said that they did make it like contradictory on purpose to kind of keep players on edge, so like you didn't know what to believe while you were playing it.
Well, there's also
Yeah,
that level of like, the
that's
different families and different people who were like, at work like against each other. Like where you see like a lot of that in 3, where like Claudia disagreed really heavily with her father, and just like that like was like a theme throughout like a lot of the things that happened in the town. It was just certain people who went one way or the other on any number of things, and then the drugs like.
It's funny because I can certainly imagine something like the Order trying to take these people in. There is always going to be, if it was real, which is like both scary and ridiculous to consider at the same time. Like I can easily see this group of people perhaps trying to tell people kind of what they want to hear, even if it's like 100% the truth, as a way of of indoctrination. So I guess it kind of makes some sense.
I mean, they drugged the town and tourists, so
not very good people. Again, that's something you could have completely missed in the first game, not had any clue about. But hey ho. But no, I think the Order's pretty cool. Did I say it? That's not what I meant. Sorry, it's late. I apologize. The Order's pretty cool. Yeah, that's great. I guess I've got a picture of Valtiel on my wall, and God knows what else. No. What I'm trying to say is that I think the concept of it, I think, is pretty good once you delve into it and you kind of understand. And the great thing with the Order is there's a lot of interplay going on again with individuals, trying to take advantage of what they have to do their own things at times and what their ultimate goals are. And it does vary a bit. And of course, different people's interpretations of it as well.
Yeah, I think that like in the early games, it's all like pretty vague, and they don't develop it a ton. But in the 4th game, it is off the charts, like just with their orphanage where they're like collecting kids and brainwashing them, and like it really like takes it like full circle like there as you get into more of the lore.
I'm pretty sure they at least referenced or made mention that there was stuff like that going on in the first game. Like I vaguely seem to recall there was talk about it. Was like it came up in a couple of bits you could look at, and you like get the impression they're doing some pretty questionable things here, as if they weren't already. I could be wrong there.
I don't think there was anything overt. It was something that was more expanded on in the sequels. But some backstories from like supplementary materials, they would say that the Order. Well, what you heard about the Order was that they would murder those who got in their way. So, like with the whole drug ring, they murdered the mayor, who was against drugs, and they also murdered narcotics officer Gucci, who was investigating. So they were doing some shady things in that regard, and some other supplementary materials. Sorry.
Oh, we got a cameo. Hello.
Some other supplementary materials said that like the cult was also taking young women to try to force the birth of God, and it wasn't working. So they were killing women too.
Definitely a shady group. I would agree there. Did some shady stuff. I think it's the understatement of the podcast.
Saying these guys are the good guys would be like, just woof. That's not true at all.
Yeah. Would not be. Yeah. Don't get caught saying that in public or on record. Please don't. You might go to jail for that minimum.
Again, there were different layers to it that just some of them like seemed to tie in and other ones didn't. Like there weren't really like many texts. I think there's only one that's actually in the game that has anything to do with Valtiel. He's just seen in the 3rd one, but he's never like really mentioned. And then they have other things like in the end of 3, they have like Saint Nicholas and Saint Jennifer and how they tie in is like really heavily argued, and for whether or not Saint Nicholas actually is Pyramid Head is like another thing. So there are like a lot of things in the lore that, you know, go one way or the other.
I think the thing as well with the Order is that when you've effectively got what is, you could almost, I don't know if it's fair to class it as like almost like a heretic religion, maybe. I don't know if that's a fair way to classify it. Maybe that's understating it.
Enough.
Yeah.
No, they're like an organized religion. I mean,
yeah.
That's how at least Lisa kind of talked to Harry. Said it's like a queer religion. Like it was something that seemed to be kept under wraps, though. I think they were trying not to be out in the open with it. But by Silent Hill 3, like Vincent got a lot of money coming into the Order, and they were able to, you know, expand it and stuff.
And that's the thing as well, especially
his money was like a side thing that was just for personal gain. That's why he gets punished for it. But to call it like, that's why like she said it was like a queer religion, like because like that's like something like you don't tell somebody that it's a cult, and that isn't a religion. It's stuff that's like kept hidden, and it's brainwashing, and it's really like heavily like no one knows, like it's all need to know, like a pyramid scheme or something, like where like Leonard knows a whole bunch of stuff, but you know, like Claudia only knew it because she was his kid, like, and it's not stuff that like anyone would know, like in the group.
And I think the thing as well is that this, again, this heretical sort of religion, this indoctrination, I think it's kind of a subject matter I think a lot of people kind of find, to at least some degree, kind of remotely intriguing. You know, the kind of the thoughts about, again, because religion has been such a huge part of human history for, you know, for ages, for, you know, for centuries, millenniums, whatever you want to call it. So we need these sort of little offshoots, you know, then they're kind of like breaking off from the norm. I think there's a degree of fascination to it, whether you realize it or not. I think to a degree. I think it works really well. Yeah, I think this. You know, I don't know how much they've particularly featured in later Silent Hill games. I don't know.
They really get away from the whole cult aspect after like all the Team Silent games. They really stray away from it.
They bring it back a little bit in Homecoming. They talk about it. They talk about a different like offshoot, someone who broke away from the Order to establish their own sort of sect.
Yeah,
and that's sort of like the warring in Homecoming.
Yeah, and in the fourth game, they have like a lot of like just like really tiny like examples of like it'll be like somebody's like monument when in like one of the cemeteries somewhere that you go to, or if you like take Eileen around when she's kind of like, you know, like not so with it, she'll start reading the red text that's all over like that one like whole level that's like around Toluca Lake, and she like goes through like a bunch of weird stuff, like just she'll like have a line about like something, and it's like how that ties in, and like a lot of the lore for like the whole series is in the fourth game.
All right, but
are we finished?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, all right.
Yep.
Hey, Drill, want to read up number 13?
Number 13. The series is known for displaying multiple endings. How do you feel about the premise of some of them or their symbolism? I mean, there's a lot to go into. Like Silent Hill 2 had a lot in depth with it, like how you know, with like the certain stuff with James. I think that was described earlier.
I like it.
Yeah.
It's fun. Lots of replay value.
Same here.
I think there's two fronts to it. Yeah. I think you've got the gameplay wise, it does give you reasons to replay the game, and perhaps to do it in different ways. I think there's also the side of it where it's kind of whoever you're playing as, especially sort of in the early games. You know, I mean, Silent Hill 2, for example. You know, you've got this individual who you're controlling who's obviously done some not very good things, and it's about, you know, a bit of repentance perhaps, and, you know, kind of you know, accepting the blame for what he did and that sort of thing. Although will he? Would he actually do that? So there's kind of a more of a moral reason, I think for those some of existing as to whether the person you're playing as would actually be willing to accept what they've done, which is kind of why they're there in the first place, and kind of toying around with different alternatives in that respect. I think the only danger, I think, with sometimes of the series, and it's not the only one, is that when you start with like these multiple ending stuff, you do sometimes feel like this compulsion to always offer loads of different endings to games, and you have to just make sure that you're able to justify there being multiple endings to these games, because it can be easy to kind of just feel you have to do it for the sake of doing it because you've always done it. That is a danger and a trap that some series do fall into.
Yeah, because sometimes you end up getting the bad ending because, oh, you didn't do this specific thing. Like Homecoming because you didn't mercy kill the lady.
Oh, yeah.
Or they start existing for no. Sorry,
That was so messed up.
Yeah, the danger is as well that you start having these endings that you feel are just like kind of just there. You know, there's sometimes going to be a bit tricky to justify, which is the problem. Now, that's not to say that Silent Hill has done that. Silent Hill has done a very great job of, you know, of these endings, of kind of giving you reasons to replay them, to find something out. If you've not done something quite right, you can kind of tell. Or you just want to see someone getting abducted by aliens, or, you know, blowing up Silent Hill with a dog. You know, they also have their own values. So
I got so mad when I was playing Silent Hill 4, and I think my first ending was literally the ending where Henry is in the hospital. Yeah, he's in the hospital greeting Eileen, and it's like, yay, they escaped. And then all of a sudden, the camera pans all the way back to the hotel, and is fucking infested with ghosts and everything. And I'm like, what did I do wrong? I swear I put candles everywhere, medallions, everything, and somehow I did not clear all the hauntings. That got on my nerves.
Yeah, I don't like I don't like sometimes how you have to look up a guide if you want the specific ending.
Oh yeah, like I know if yeah, that can be a giant pain, yes, because if you want to get the UFO endings, I think you have to play the game again like multiple times.
Most of the time, the UFO endings are locked behind New Game Plus because they add an item that you have to use at specific locations throughout the game, and you're not gonna know the specific locations unless you look them up. Like, props to the people who actually found it out on their own.
You know, what's bad though? The first game, the guides, they would say, "Oh, there's a UFO ending. You only have to use it in these 2 areas. You gotta use it in like 5."
Yeah.
They like missed all the other. I'm like, I feel so bad for people trying to get the UFO ending. Like, why isn't it working?
Yeah, this is the problem with game guides that were fan made in 1999. They weren't particularly accurate.
No, I'm talking about published, the official guide.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Even the unofficial and the official guide both messed up on the UFO ending.
Wow.
Maybe that was poor. Yeah. Maybe that was poor communication from Konami then.
Yeah.
Translation errors. I don't know. I didn't know that. That's not good.
Yeah, sometimes the guides aren't perfect and there are errors. Like sometimes they mistranslate something or they forget particular details.
Pretty big thing
or
to get wrong.
Or they tell the writer something and then they take it away from the game. Another famous case was with Silent Hill 2. They were saying in a New Game Plus, you would be able to read like the monuments with missing letters and stuff. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that never happened in the game. I guess that was something they took away and they didn't tell the guide writer.
Yeah, that does happen. Yeah, late cuts, that sort of thing. That's always possible.
But yeah,
well, aware of that.
Oh, sorry, my bad. What were you gonna say, Dave Rager?
Oh, I was just gonna say that I like the fact that the majority of the games have multiple endings, especially because really the only 2 that are directly connected as far as any sort of cohesive narrative is 1 and 3. So with the multiple endings, you know, it leaves it kind of to the player to decide what they want the ending to be for most of the games, and kind of works well since Silent Hill is sort of that anthology sort of series. So if you want the ending to be something serious, like for example, like in Silent Hill 2, if you want it to be that James comes to terms with everything he does and then leaves Silent Hill with Lisa, you know, it's you know, that's the ending that you can choose. Or if you feel that, he would actually kill himself, that's the ending you could also go for as well. Or, if you think the joke endings, like the whole thing was, done by a dog at a control room, or, aliens, it's like that's totally up to the player. So I do like that, especially too, because the replay value there and the added stuff with a lot of the new game plus features that they add in is really nice. So it keeps you coming back.
Yeah, I think like one of my favorite ones was Shattered Memories in the UFO ending, where you're telling Kaufman everything that happens in the first game, and he pretty much says, "Oh wait, you're telling me all this about cults and gods and stuff," and he calls you crazy. And then it turns out Cheryl's a dog, and Kaufman's an alien.
I know, it's a complete insanity. It's complete insanity.
Do you guys remember Book of Memories' is joke ending?
No,
Wasn't
I
that the
don't.
one that has James and his wife in it briefly?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
James also cameoed in Shattered Memories as well.
No, he cameos in a couple endings, I think, because isn't he in the UFO ending in 3?
Yes,
as
he
well?
is, actually.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you see him in it, and
And he's
they're
in Downpour.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I didn't even know he was in
There's
Downpour.
the surprise ending where you
Oh,
see
right.
Pyramid Head cut the cake. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Wow.
Yes. I'm aware of that.
It's like I like some of the endings. Some of them have like emotional connections, like Silent Hill 2, where James either lives or kills himself, and then there's other ones where it's just like obviously for laughs. I did like one thing though about some of the new game plus stuff for 2, and that's the fact that in order to get the ceremony ending, the one where you have to collect everything and try to resurrect Mary.
Oh, the rebirth ending.
Yeah, you have to do that only in New Game Plus, and there's items that you have to pick up in order to make it happen. And I thought that was kind of cool and unique at the time.
Yeah.
But I guess we could move on to the next one real quick, which is easy. Number 14 is, what is your favorite and least favorite weapon in the franchise?
Least favorite would probably be the knife, because it's fucking useless.
Knife sucks. Definitely.
Actually, it's actually really good against the nurses in Nowhere. It's really fast. You can kind of stun lock them. I was pretty impressed.
I was just kind of using the hammer because it just completely obliterates any enemy in the Silent Hill 1.
That's my favorite in the first game is the hammer one.
I'm a simple man. Give me a 2x4 so I can beat the shit out of you.
My favorite weapon's probably obvious, but it's the great knife. I mean, come on, man. Pyramid's knife is fucking awesome.
It's
Great knife.
it's
I know
cool.
you
I
can
didn't like
use.
using it, to be honest.
I know you can use a
Yeah,
katana.
It's really slow, but I do like how it looks. I'll say.
I think you can use a katana in the third game.
You can
Yeah, I
use
think
one
you
in the
can.
first one as well.
Yeah, there's one in the first one as well. Yeah.
Well,
You
that
have
makes
to unlock
sense.
it.
I'm talking.
Yeah.
Is that like a laser weapon like you get in 3? Like for the joke ending?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, the sexy beam. I think it was.
Yeah,
called.
sexy beam.
And you can get a
Some kinds of
lightsaber.
absurdity. The lightsaber was actually really cool. I enjoyed using that.
Yeah. I do like whenever games give you like overpowered weapons just for fun.
Yeah, as long as you've had to beat the game incredibly well to get them, like I've got no problem with that at all. I think it's good because it means if you want to explore things you didn't really have the opportunity to explore otherwise.
I
Here you
swear,
go.
I swear in Silent Hill 4 you can give Eileen a machine gun and it just kills everything.
I hear.
Oh,
I've
yeah,
heard
'cause
she's very good with it, but it has issues with using it, like
Mm.
game related. That's about all I know. But apparently she's actually pretty good at that, from what I've heard.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily have a favorite weapon. I would probably say probably the chainsaw is one of my favorites, especially from 2. Because there's a couple of unique things, like James will, if you're standing idle and there's enemies around, he'll scream. He'll like lift the chainsaw up and scream at enemies, which is pretty great. There's actually another thing that there's another thing too that I think if you attack Pyramid Head with the chainsaw, it actually bends the blade, so the blade of the chainsaw is bent for the rest of the game
Cool.
if you do that.
Really?
Yeah, I've only ever seen it once, so I don't know if it's actually a thing in the game or if it was a glitch. It might have been a glitch. I'm not really 100% sure, But I always thought that was really funny that happened, because my brother's chainsaw on that one playthrough was bent for the rest of the game. My least favorite weapon, I would probably say, is the hyper spray, just because it's such a pain in the ass to freaking get it to be viable, to
And it
get it
hurts
to be really,
games.
yeah, that too. Yeah, to get it to be really powerful though, you have to be really, really freaking good at the game, and it's just like, it's not worth it.
Funky though that in everything everyone said, no one yet has actually mentioned like a gun. It's kind of a bit weird. I don't know if that says something. But they're just kind of there, or
I mean, the guns are fun.
But they are fun. But I would have thought, like massive hunting rifle, whatever like that. I'm surprised no one said anything like that. It's all these kind of more obscure weapons or like hidden weapons.
I think because the guns are not. It's easier to kill stuff with the melee weapons, so I think that's what most people stuck with.
Which is a weird irony.
And you don't wait ammo.
If I want to use a gun so badly and a survival horror game, though, I think I would just go to Resident Evil for that, because guns galore. But in case of Silent Hill, though, I think it's more fun to use a melee weapon. Guns more or less resort.
Yeah. I usually there's an art to it.
I usually just say guns for a boss or something.
Yeah, I think it.
Because in the early games, the game, Silent Hill 1, just chucks ammo at you if you know where to. If you look around for it, you can find gobs of it. You don't really need to hit anything, although you definitely can.
I think it's just Silent Hill doesn't really give you that sort of sense, especially in the New Game Plus runs, you'll end up finding weapons that you couldn't have used otherwise, in the first run, that are unique to the New Game Plus, like the chainsaw, or there's the power drill in Silent Hill 1. And so there's these new unique weapons that stand out more than just your run-of-the-mill guns. Silent Hill doesn't have the same impact to me with guns as it does with Resident Evil, when you get the Cougar Magnum, for example, and you're just able to one-shot zombies with it. So
it's more of just it's more of it's just there as a tool as much as anything else. It's not really
yeah,
which is funky. I guess it makes some sense.
Unless we're talking about Silent Hill 4, where it's ghosts everywhere and you need silver bullets and there's barely any, and I'm like, oh, this is annoying.
So wait, are they werewolves now?
I just remember that they chase you everywhere, they're annoying, and you need to put them down with the swords or the silver bullet, and I think it stuns them for a bit for the silver bullet, and the sword stays there, but you only get 3 in the game.
Yeah, you have to run back and grab it before you leave the level.
Yup. It's really annoying.
Ugly.
But I guess we could move on to... Well, actually, I have a side question before we hit the final question for Whitney. Whitney, I wonder, what did you think of the canceled Silent Hill games like Cold Fear, and there was another one that was sort of Origins?
You mean Cold Heart?
Yeah,
stuff?
Cold Heart.
I thought that one seemed a lot more interesting than Shattered Memories.
I agree.
So
the concept of that was amazing.
So what I learned was through a post-mortem interview with Sam Barlow. He's the writer of the game. They were desperate to make this game on the Wii, and they chose to this kind of pisses me off. A Silent Hill remake was already greenlit by Konami, and someone said, oh, we can just say our game is going to be a remake. And so they just forced their original idea into a Silent Hill 1 remake so they could just get started with the project instead.
Sound incredibly disappointed.
Yeah. I'm like, Cold Heart sounded... I really liked the original idea. It was really cool, and instead we got a remake.
Just to say, there's actually cover art for Silent Hill Cold Heart, and it looks really cool. Yeah. I like that cover a lot. I actually didn't know about that. I'm looking up on this wiki right now. I didn't realize how many projects and games had been canceled for Silent Hill. It's kind of amazing to me.
There was another one that was on... I think it was on PS3. I think it was something like Origins, where you're this guy and you can walk around and pick up a chair and hit enemies with it. But they canceled it. I forget what it's called.
That was the first version of Origins.
Origins, yes.
And was very bizarre. The story was weird. Like I think Sam Barlow described it. They said it was kind of like a dark comedy, like based on Scrubs. It was weird. I don't know.
It was weird,
So
but the
kinda
gameplay
I'm
looked...
glad that got canceled.
It was weird, but
With
the
Origins.
gameplay looked kind of interesting. But yeah, I definitely think that Cold Heart was the more interesting one.
I was very disappointed that we didn't get that version of the game. I mean, I like Shattered Memories. You know, it's what got me to start my Silent Hill site and stuff. So, I have a soft spot for the game, and I really liked the psych mechanics and stuff. But oh man, if we got Cold Heart, that would have been really cool.
There were some cool ideas they were gonna do, like using the Nintendo Wi-Fi to actually determine the weather.
That was crazy.
Cool.
Oh, I remember hearing about this.
They're also gonna take in like real news stories and stuff, and there was gonna be this kind of weather mechanic where you had to it was dynamic weather, and you had to keep her temperature up by like finding clothes and food, and you'd also have the psych profiling going at the same time. Yeah.
The
It's
whole
sounded
thing
cool.
sounds kind of weird unless you take battle damage.
I was going to say, you'd be pretty screwed if you're playing that game in this country. Like, it'd be just game over instantly. Just rain, more rain, more rain.
Well, no, it would have been ice. It would have been ice. They would have just
Oh, even better.
added. Yeah, it would have been blizzard and stuff like that because she's in the cold.
Great. So, total just fail state. Like, well, what are you going to do?
Oh, and it's kind of crazy.
Move down to like Nevada or something. Go play there.
Looking over this wiki, I had actually no idea that there was a planned Silent Hill 5, that there was actually another numbered sequel that they actually had planned to make. Like, that's freaking insane.
Yeah, it started off. Team Silent was working on it, and then Konami, disappointed with the returns on Silent Hill 4, I guess they lost faith in them, decided to hand it off to Western developers.
Yeah, they got them way too early just because of one game didn't do as high as the Predator.
Well, it wasn't just 4. What's kind of funny is the series never actually sold that well. And when Silent Hill 2 came out, it's like really revered nowadays, but back when it came out, it wasn't so much. It bombed in Japan. And when it came out here, I remember one review, like in PSM, they gave it a 7, and they were saying it was like badly written fiction, like it didn't make sense. People thought it was too different from the first game, so people were disappointed in it, and that's why they went back to the cult stuff in 3. Yeah, so
Now that I think about it, that actually makes sense considering how 1 and 3 are like, 3 is the direct sequel. Yeah.
Yeah.
and like 5 originally there was, or these are early interviews, they were saying that they wanted to try to do like kind of like a Fear and Daylight thing, and it sounds like it would have been pretty cool, but it just didn't happen.
You know, this actually, real quick, Andre, this remind me of, like, slightly off topic though, but this reminds me of what happened to God Hand when IGN gave it that low score and it killed the game potential sales. So like it sounds like that with Silent Hill 2, where while 7 is still a good score compared to what God Hand got, though it killed the potential of it being a much bigger hit there at the time compared to now, of course.
Yeah, Konami is just they seem to like are quick to jump the gun. Like they won't give things a chance. If it's not a hit like right off the bat, they're just gonna kill it. Like
There was actually cut footage for Silent Hill 5. It was like I think it was back then before it like became Downpour. No, not Downpour. Because they did. From what I've seen of it, it was more, I want to say somewhat daytime, but had more like gray in the, as opposed to nighttime in the Silent Hill game. So yeah, that was a little. They pretty much decided now we'll scrap it and just make it Homecoming. So yeah.
So disappointing when I hear about that. It's like we could have got a real numbers sequel and they just completely fucked us.
Yeah.
I know, man. It's
Hey, maybe it'll get rebooted. Like that's the rumors that
Yeah,
Silent Hills is
it's
gonna come
very
back.
possible. Very possible.
PS5
So-
exclusive. I keep hearing that rumor so many times. It's like,
We'll see.
Yeah, I'm not holding my breath. Skeptically optimistic, if anything.
Same here.
but
I'll believe it when I see it.
same. I'm sort of in that same bandwagon.
Yeah, definitely.
But we're gonna move on to a more lighter question, and this is the final one. To cap off this podcast, how did you feel about Akira Yamaoka's music throughout the franchise?
Love it.
Awesome.
Love it.
It's one of the best parts
I
of the series.
once they replace him in Downpour, it isn't the same without
What
him.
happened was he, I guess, gotten him and Konami, I guess, gotten like a little tiff, and they couldn't bring him back. They did sneak him in onto the Book of Memories soundtrack. He has a little guitar solo in the Love Psalm on the soundtrack. You can hear him in there. But yeah.
Konami seem to have a habit of like having tiffs with their employees. Just from now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of pissing off people in general.
So I really admired his work. It's amazing that he doesn't even know how to read music, and he was able to create these great pieces of music. And
That's not as uncommon, I swear. Like, people don't know how to read sheets of music, but they can create great stuff.
I had to ask you guys a question, but what is your favorite song in the Silent Hill games? Like, just any of them. Mine is probably Silent Hill 3's intro. We're Still Here. It's a really nice song. I love the vocals to it, cause and you know, it kind of like highlights just how the game begins. You know, it's just a great track in general.
I honestly not a big fan of that particular track.
Really now,
Yeah, because it feels like a product of its time type song, and it doesn't click with me nowadays.
I think one of my favorites is still Theme of Laura.
Yes.
I was pretty impressed. He wrote it in like 3 days, but I also really love One More Soul to the Call.
Yeah,
One of my
it's like-
favorites. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
all I was gonna say was obviously my favorites are the intros of Silent Hill 1 and 2, Theme of Laura, and the one they did in Silent Hill 1. I thought those were really well done, as well as the I forget which ending it is. I think it's no, it's not the leave ending. No, it is the leave ending final theme. It's called something. I forget what it's called, but that theme is so good.
Promise?
I think so. Hold on,
I don't remember off the top of my head.
I'm gonna see if I can
did-
find it on YouTube. Yeah.
Yeah, do that. But real quick though, my personal favorite track of like all of them really is probably Room of Angel from 4.
That is a good
Nice.
one too.
That's a really good song.
I think the game had the best trailer. Like that sold me on the game. Just watching that game trailer, it makes the game look so creepy. And with the Room of Angel track, it's great.
Oh, okay. So I don't know which ending it was, and I'm sorry for cutting you off, Daybreaker, but
No, you're fine.
the song is called "Overdose Delusion."
Oh
yeah,
yes.
yeah, that's
Okay.
one of the credit songs. Yeah, I like that one a lot too.
It's so good, man. I just love that song so damn much.
Yeah, Silent Hill 2 soundtrack to me is probably my favorite out of the series. There's just so many good songs on that. The Heaven's Night track is really good. The track that plays when you fight the two pyramid heads, Betrayal, that's really good too. Actually, my favorite track from that though is actually it's so weird when I tell people this, but it's the result screen track. The I might pronounce this wrong. It's a Pianismo Epilogue. I probably pronounced that wrong, but like I really like that track. It makes so much sense, especially like for someone who goes through like a first playthrough, because this is how I felt. It's like that track is like the calm after the storm, sort of, because it's a very calming track. Like it's not these really strange tones and stuff like throughout the game. So you experience all this stuff, and then it plays that at the very end when you get to see the results of your playthrough and everything. So I think it fits really well. But Silent Hill 3 soundtrack is phenomenal as well. Mary Elizabeth McGillen is a great vocalist, so I absolutely love the opening, and I actually really like the beginning to the opening. The Lost Carol portion of it is really good too. The probably my favorite track from that though is Sickness Unto Foolish Death. That track's really good. I like that a lot. But yeah, it's really good stuff across the board. And that's for those interested who listen to this podcast. Akira also did the soundtrack for Shadows of the Damned. So
Oh yeah, that's right. He did. I remember that.
Really now?
Yep.
Witchcraft.
yeah,
He did.
That was so funny.
That's pretty awesome, man. Yeah, he's incredible. His music is just phenomenal.
Honorable mention: Tender Sugar from Silent Hill 4. Mint.
Oh, that's a good one too. Yeah.
So good.
Oh, nice.
If they did reboot the series, I just can't imagine him not doing the music, because I mean, I'm sure Daniel Litch, he did as most as he could with that Silent Hill Downpour OST
And Book of Memories.
Yeah, and Book of Memories, but it just didn't feel the same to me. It felt like something was missing.
It felt more like a cinema score.
Yeah.
And which makes sense given that his body of work was like doing, stuff for like Dexter and movies and stuff. I'd hope they bring Akira back if the series is getting rebooted.
definitely. I'd like to see him come back to do the score.
He did say that he has really fond memories of working on the series, and they'd love to come back. Same with Masahiro Ito. It's up to Konami.
Mm-hmm.
I'm surprised you guys didn't mention that his soundtracks were used for the movies.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh
they
yeah.
were.
Yeah.
Also,
Yep, they're
Jeff Dana also helped, I guess, make them more like movie scores too. But yeah, I thought that was a really good thing in the movies that they reused the Akira's tracks. It made it feel more like Silent Hill. Definitely.
All right. Any more on this topic?
I'm forgetting something. I was gonna mention something, but I remember now. So if you want to hear more of Akira's works, you can actually hear his music in The Medium. That's a new survival horror game coming out, and I can tell that that's definitely his music after watching the first trailer. And I think if you pre-order The Medium, you will get the soundtrack if you do that. So I would recommend people hopping on it, checking it out, and seeing how it is.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I'll have to look into that.
Lily, you there?
Well, she's back now. She was AFK before. Can she hear us?
Yeah.
I think she's muted.
Oh,
Wanna ask you
yeah.
a question?
I didn't realize I was
There we
still
go.
muted.
Hooray.
But, yeah, I had to run away for a sec toward the end, so sorry about that.
It's fine. Actually, you want to answer number 15 real quick? It is how do you feel about Akira's music throughout the series?
Oh yeah, totally added that extra feel to the atmosphere.
What about
So-
favorite tracks?
I know. That's a tough one.
No pressure.
No pressure at all. Because it's, to me personally, he's done a lot of great music, so it's like hard to pinpoint. I would say most of the OSTs with him were superb in my opinion.
I know, something from Silent Hill 2 or 3, but it'd be so hard to pick.
It'd be like, just pick all of them. There you go.
Yeah, I know.
Easy answer. Easy answer. But I think we got to close out soon, because it's almost like, I think we're 3 hours in this podcast.
Holy cow. That's our longest one since MGS.
Yep. So,
All right. Let's do outros.
let's do those outros.
Let's start from the top. Andre, outro now.
Oh, all right. You can find me at Twitter, Andre B Venom. It was we had such a fun time on this podcast, and yeah, can't wait for more.
Black Shadow, outro yourself,
Yeah.
sir.
Yeah, can be found on Twitter, BlackShow993, as I mentioned. Feels like a long time ago now. I'm also available on Twitch, Black_Shadow_993, where I will, again, cheap plug, streaming Silent Hill 4 Blind at the end of the month. So that should be a really good series. I'm looking forward to that.
All right. Mr. Daybreaker, outro
Yeah.
yourself, sir.
You guys can find me at Daybreaker Rain on YouTube, Twitch, and Twitter. I have a big charity stream planned here on November 7th for Extra Life. So I hope to be doing that. So if you guys come by that, I'd really appreciate it. I might actually, because of this, I might actually play a Silent Hill game during that. But I might try to even play one of them for something for the channel just over the month of October. But yeah, so this was a lot of fun, and I hope to be on another one of these and brush up on some horror game and survival horror game stuff.
All right. King of Hearts, outro yourself.
So you can find me as a Gummy Shark Guy, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, Twitch, all that good shit. I'm in the middle of an event. I do it every year on October called Gummy Shark Ghoul. Horror gameplay videos every day of the month. Right now I'm going through the original Resident Evil, and I'm doing horror game streams along with that.
Oh, okay. Who's next? Lily, outro yourself.
You can find me at Lily Greywolf, Lily_Greywolf for YouTube and Twitch mostly. I think my claim to fame was probably going through Pathologic twice. Once is the original, once for the HD version. So that's pretty much my biggest sector. Other than that, I just jump into survival horror here and there. Mostly I've been working on an RPG Maker game.
All right. Renegade, outro yourself, good sir.
You can find me on Twitter at RenOperative_. You can find me on YouTube at Renegade Operative. I am currently in the middle of playing Resident Evil 7, and I know people want to see me play that again. Trying to get my sleeping schedule back on track, so it's normal when I go through that. I'm thinking maybe I'll go through the Silent Hill games, the classic ones, because I've been playing the first one, and seeing if I can stream those. So all horror games is October. That's all I'm going to be doing, as well as getting this podcast up and working with the guys on horror movies. So check it out at the Infinite Ammo Syndicate, and that's all I'll be doing. Check me out on YouTube as well, Renegade Operative.
Hey, all right, Miss Whitney, outro yourself.
I'm Whitney. You can find me online on Twitter. My handle is Kemi_Row. I also stream survival horror games, trying to raise money for Extra Life all year round. Right now, I'm just kind of playing Dead by Daylight, but I plan on playing Fatal Frame for the first time. I've never played those games, so that should be a lot of fun. And if you like Silent Hill or Deadly Premonition, you probably already know my sites, so...
Hey, all right, and last but not least, me. You can find me on Twitter at Immortal Brandel, Twitch at Brandel, and I'm actually going to be streaming Democrat 1 and/or Resident Evil 2 Remake, maybe tomorrow or later in the week. I'm probably going to use no microphone, so most likely we're doing Discord if you guys here want to listen to me play the game or rant a little. But yeah, that's it. Thank you for watching or listening, if that's your thing. And I hope you have a good day, night, afternoon, whatever time of day it is. And
yeah, stay safe, everyone.
Do not go to Silent Hill,
everybody.
Bye.
Stay away from cities that are named after a raccoon.
Damn.
You all be excellent to each other.
Don't go to either. Save yourself.